Chapter 50-51. The void shattered and the stars returned. Everything is in silence. The 6 bodies, like meteors, shuttled through the void, galloping forward. The leaders are Qin Qing and Chun Qiu. Damn thing, what is this? Qin Qing cursed with a gloomy expression. I saw that the more we moved forward, the more fragmented the void became, as if we had experienced an unprecedented battle. As far as the eye can see, they are all fragmented, and on the edge of the void crack, there is a depressive atmosphere flowing. That kind of breath was dark red, like a river of blood, unable to speak. Let me catch it, cramp and peel it, and bury it under the temple as a cornerstone. Cui Jing said fiercely, killing in the depths of his eyes. I hope eternal warriors will hold on for a while. Chun Qiu was a little worried. The next moment, a weak wave swept from the depths of the void. Qin Qing stretched out his hand to cover it, directly restrained the weak fluctuation, and then dragged it over. Gu, the ancient pavilion of Guhai City? Seeing the figure that looked like a blood gourd in his hand, Qin Qing was completely shocked to the point of indescribable. Guting? How could he make it like this? Cui Jingxiu stepped forward, and after seeing that it was Guting, he was equally shocked. It looks like it should have been intercepted halfway. Chun Qiu frowned. Wei Liujia thought, I wonder if it will be Shang Juanzong. Look at him in large numbers and small ones, you see how I crush them into powder. Fengshan slammed his fists, shouting shockingly. At this time, Guting, the son of Geheiqing, who was being carried by Qin Qing, woke up from his coma. As soon as he saw Qin Qing and the others, he showed the look of the rest of his life, and his eyes were gloomy. Chen, Master Qin, the pills have been taken away, and all the elders of my ancient sea city have also fallen. Upon hearing this, Qin Qing immediately sank and asked, Who did this? How about Wangu Wushuang auction house? Yes, it's Shang Juanzong, Qin Tua. Gu Ting gritted his teeth and said bitterly, He has already rushed over here. Qin Qing was furious, and Yen Li surged, Damn, this guy is looking for death. But Chuan Qiu, who has always been extremely quiet, looked at Gu Ting and said indifferently, Did you attract him? Gu Ting trembled, shock flashed in his eyes, and finally he said, Master Chun, we were intercepted and killed by Shangzhenzong midway, and we were not able to return to the sky. Only if we escape back to eternal warriors can we have a ray of life. So far we have escaped here. I am the only one left. Chun Qiu interrupted with a wave of his hand, and then said, This matter, Gu Haiqing will give an account in the future. What we need to do now is to obliterate Qin Tua. Unparalleled. At this moment, the big sun above the sky has overturned and was replaced by a huge blood moon. The void is shattered, and several heavens have been destroyed. And the eternal, unparalleled auction house built on a heavenly plane was already on the verge of destruction. A dark river of blood tore the earth, rushing wildly, swallowing all visible objects. The plane was shattering, and the behemoth at the center of the heavenly plane, the eternal warrior, was now surrounded by a river of dark blood. With Qingling as the leader, nearly 10 Yangxians stationed here are resisting bitterly. She had just been promoted to the immortal, and her realm was not yet stable, so it was too difficult to bear such a terrifying shock. But she never stepped back, releasing her strength and resisting bitterly. What is even more frightening is that Qingling doesn't know who the enemy is, because this kind of heaven and earth vision appears almost instantaneously, and then everything becomes passive. The dark river of blood rushed freely, turning into blood dragons that shook the sky and the earth, rushing towards the heaven of the eternal, unparalleled auction house. Damn, what are these things? Who would use this moment to move hands? Qingling gritted her teeth, already extremely angry. Beside her, a middle-aged Yanxian also gritted his teeth and resisted. Fairy Qingling, you go first, and quickly invite Master Chun and the others to come over. We will stand here for a while. Impossible, I'm leaving, I can't resist it anymore. Qingling shook her head resolutely. But if this continues, we must not be able to hold it. The middle-aged Yanxian couldn't help but said, the long sword in his hand had been concealed by the dark blood stains, and the power was gone. That can't be retired. Qing Ling said quietly. Thousands of azure green horses burst out of her palm, turning into the strongest enchantment, covering the entire eternal, unparalleled palace. Roar! There was a loud and thorough bang that tore through the chaos and darkness. The endless river of blood gushes from the depths of the earth, and it continues to condense into a billion-meter-long snake. The thick blood dripped from the gaps in every scale. A pair of blood pupils, vertical pupils shining like a blood sun. It is too huge, even though the eternal unparalleled temple, it is a bit small in front of it. The order collapses, the universe is destroyed, everything is in chaos. At this moment, the Eternal Warrior's Heaven Palace is like Yi Guzhou, struggling to support it, and it may capsize at any time. Of the nearly 10 Yenxian who originally stationed here, 3 have already died. Facing the flood snake composed of a dark river of blood, all Yenxian faces were ashes. As long as one round of the blood river hits, the Temple of Heaven will be unprotected. I'm afraid they can't resist. The middle-aged Yenxian bit her teeth and looked at Qingling on the side, and he wanted to send her out of here. But the next moment, the sky of chaos trembles suddenly, followed by a burst of loud shouts. All Yanxian's eyes converged on the sky. There, a sacred mountain-like figure, like the afterglow of the setting sun, slammed heavily on the giant head of the snake. Boom! The blood burst out, and there was an incomparable dying explosion. The blood river flood snake roared wildly, its entire head was almost penetrated, and one of its vertical pupil snake eyes was broken. The huge body weighed heavily in the river of blood. Quickly enter the hall. Qingling yelled, and the few remaining Yenxian all entered the hall quickly, and then closed the gate of heaven. The blood river roared, and the plain of collapsed. The blood river flood snake that was pierced through its head fell heavily into the blood river, rolling up billions of blood waves, covering the sky and the sun. I think it is something. It turns out to be a chopstick too. Fengshan shook his figure, shaking off the blood on his shoulders, and spitting in disdain. But in this moment, Qin Qing's scream suddenly resounded. Fengshan, go back. Huh. Fengshan was puzzled and was about to speak, but was shocked to realize that a huge flood snake had condensed in the river of blood below him. It opened the mouth of blood that swallowed the sky, and spit out an endless river of blood at Fengshan. Because this was so fast, Fengshan was already swallowed when Qin Qing and others arrived. As far as I can see, even the heavenly temple of the unparalleled auction house is unavoidable to sink into a river of blood. Chapter 50-52. Qin Qing halted his feet, flared his 5 fingers, and shot out 10,000 ray of light in an instant. Huameng is like the sharpest arrow, tearing through the void, rushing towards the blood river snake. Puff puff! The endless blood mist exploded, and the blood river flood snake opened its mouth and roared. With this roar, Fengshan's sacred mountain-like figure escaped from the huge mouth embarrassedly. Mother, it's dangerous. Fengshan's face was pale, with a big taboo. What is this? Qin Qing and the others also arrived, staring at the river of blood beneath them, and they all had a bad feeling. Cui Jing held the Xian stick in his hand and slapped his lips and said, I didn't let Brother Jian come, is it a bit? It's okay, let's see how I demolish this place. Fengshan rubbed his hands and rushed down with a low growl. Qin Qing and Cui Jing also urged their figures and rolled down together. Chun Qiu stared at the restored ancient pavilion. This river of blood. This blood river is the incarnation of Qin Tua. Gu Ting confirmed without hesitation. He was the incarnation of the blood river before and swallowed all the elders in my ancient sea city. Hearing the words, Wei Liujia touched his chin. It shouldn't be. From the previous performance, Shang Juanzong seems quite magnificent. Right now, this blood river seems to be quite inconsistent with their performance. Chun Qiu glanced at him, then said quietly, often the more magnificent the surface, the more unbearable it is behind the back. Don't be fooled by the appearance. It makes sense, then let's. To protect eternal warriors with all your strength, and to cut the roots. Boom! Gathering Qin Qing, Cui Jing, Chun Qiu, and Wei Liujia with the full blow of the 4 immortals, the billions of blood sea snakes were directly smashed into pieces, cut off the spirit, and fell miserably into the tossing blood. In the sea of blood dissipated, revealing the eternal unparalleled temple still standing. But this situation only existed for a moment, and the endless blood sea spread again. This time, it was even crazier. Countless snakes writhed out of the sea of blood and attacked the temple. At the same time, the surface of the sea of blood shook layers of ripples, and a dark red figure walked out of it. His immortal body was floating with unimaginable blood, as if he was wearing a layer of blood armor. Although this figure has changed greatly, he can still be recognized at a glance. He is Lord Shangjuan, Qin Tu. At this moment, he is simply different from the previous bidding in the auction house. Bloodthirsty, treacherous, and powerful of some unknown restrictions, terrifying to the extreme. Stepped out of the blood sea and approached Chen Qing and others. They all noticed the abnormal movement behind them, and then saw this scene. Qin Tua? Why did you become such a ghost? Cui Jing frowned. Obviously he was a bit disgusted with Qin Tua's impression. If there is weirdness, be careful, Qin Qingning said, and then tentatively released the strength training. The violent Yanlipi stabs Qin Tua directly, and he cannot avoid it. But then he quietly raised his palm and waved, and a round of blood mirror appeared in front of him immediately, completely absorbing Qin Qing's strength. Then, the blood mirror shook and unexpectedly shot Qin Qing's previous strength intact, and its power doubled. Qin Qing's brows twitched heavily, and he drew out the real sword from his waist and cut off all the strength training. This guy is really weird, so be careful, he said condensedly. Hey, Junior of Shangjuanzong, do you really intend to be an enemy of Wangu Wushuang? Cui Jing frowned and shouted coldly. Qin Tua, who was already wrapped in a sea of blood, showed a quirky curve at the corner of his mouth. What are you Wushuang like? You dare to talk like this? Well, I will kill you all today. As Qin Tua's voice fell, the endless sea of blood rolled up billions of dust and slapped Qin Qing and others. Ha little bugs. Feng Shan shouted, and then the fairy body doubled in size and was covered by the meaning of red and yellow, like a real sacred mountain, blasting a sea of blood and dust. Rumble. Feng Shan's figure only existed for a moment, and when he touched the sea of dust, it was swallowed and absorbed. Qin Qing's face changed slightly, and she shouted without thinking, Go back, there is a problem here. You can't retreat, behind is the Eternal Warrior's Temple. Chuanqiu said in a deep voice, Feng Shan is also in a dangerous situation, let alone retreat. Then dash out a road. Cui Jing held a profound stick and rushed forward without any hesitation. The sea of blood roared and went to the center. With Chen Qing as the leader, Chuanqiu, Cui Jing and Wei Liujia all brazenly rushed to the sweeping sea of blood. The four Yangtzeans' full blows opened a crack without any suspense. But it was not Qin Tua that greeted them, but a world that seemed to be infiltrated with blood, and everything was blood red. Here, what place is it? Cui Jing said uncertainly. I'm afraid we have entered Qin Tua's trap. Chun Qiu frowned. Wei Liujia's eyes lit up. Feng Shan is ahead. Following his fingers, Feng Shan, like a sacred mountain, was lying in the blood at this moment, not knowing his life or death. Wei Liujia stopped talking and went straight to help. Liujia, don't go. Chun Qiu said anxiously, but it was still a moment late. The sudden change occurred, and Feng Shan, who was still lying in the bloodstain of life and death, suddenly disappeared. Instead, blood lines with the thickness of fingers protruded from the ground and suddenly clung to Wei Liujia's fairy body. In an instant he was pulled directly into the river of blood and disappeared completely. Since all this was completed in a flash, it was too late when they wanted to help. Qin Qing took a step forward and roared angrily, Damn chopsticks, hand them over, otherwise you will count as one, and none of them will survive. A chuckle, resounding in this blood-red world without any warning, with a bit of mockery. Really noisy, you guys today, you reading www.ukanshu.com has a count of one, you can't live. Qin Tua's figure wrapped in the river of blood quietly condensed, like a blood day, hung high above the sky, bloody. The endless blood beam came down, quickly swallowing all the power. With his arms raised flat, blood-colored diamond mirrors appeared all over him. The figures and faces of Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, and Cui Jing are reflected in each diamond mirror, which is extremely curious. Chun Qiu's complexion changed slightly, and then he seemed to realize something and hurriedly looked at his fairy body. I saw that the fairy body had already been covered with a faint blood mist, and as time passed, it gradually solidified. This situation also appeared in Qin Qing and Cui Jing. Chun Qiu said with a solemn expression, "Did you feel that the power in your body is passing by?" Qin Qing and Cui Jing nodded at the same time, then looked at Qin Tuo in the void together. Chapter 50-53. There is no doubt that all the changes in their immortal body were caused by Qin Tuo. The has increased, almost solidified. Damn it, could it be the mirrors? Cui Jing gasped slightly. With the rapid passing of Yanli, the blood armor on their immortal body became more and more solid. If you wait any longer, the consequences can be imagined. At this moment, the blood-colored diamond mirror surrounding Qin Tuo's body was no less than 100,000 faces. Every diamond mirror reflected the faces of Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, and Cui Jing, and the blood flowing in them made their faces strange and abnormal. Pretend to be A and play a ghost. Qin Qing's face was cold, and then with a wave of his arm, the real sword in his hand rushed out. In an instant, Jianhua was shocked and swept across the sky. The pure sword intent of nearly 10,000 daos all slashed towards Qin Tuo, as well as the diamond mirror around him. This sword, blended with Qin Qing's immortal style, is a sword of the strongest. Even if it is a fairy of the same realm, it must avoid its edge. But Qin Tuo didn't dodge. He still hung up in the void like a day, and then raised his arms. 100,000 diamond mirrors were like tides, and the cover that came forward pressed against Qin Qing's fairy sword. 100,000 diamond mirrors, to differentiate and impact. But these are not enough for Xianxue. It was almost a single face, with 100,000 diamond mirrors directly shattered into tens of thousands. Like a rain of blood from the sky, the diamond mirror shattered and fell into the sky. Qin Qing's immortal style was too overbearing. 100,000-faced blood-colored diamond mirror could not stop it. It was all crushed and disappeared. Then, all the sword intent stabbed Qin Tuo unabated. As long as this immortal style is in the middle, Qin Qing is completely sure to obliterate it. But then, a treacherous scene appeared. I saw that when the infinite sword intended to stab Qin Tuo, it was directly swallowed and absorbed. After falling into a dead silence for a short time, Qin Tuosan sneered and shook his arms violently, bursting out the infinite sword intent that had been swallowed in an instant. Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, and Cui Jing were all shocked, and quickly released their respective powers to resist. Rumble! Every sword intent was far better than before, and even Qin Qing almost couldn't support it. The sword light that covered the sky finally dissipated, and Qin Qing pulled down the battered enchantment and fought against Qin Tuo. Chun Qiu and Cui Jing also set off one after another, releasing their respective strengths and encircling them together. I can't help myself. Qin Tuo smiled sullenly. The next moment his whole body directly reflected the ray of blood, and he slammed into Qin Qing. Boom! The giant sound was so loud, the whole blood-colored world trembled. Blood is overflowing, spilling into the void. The three Yangxian's full blows were actually intercepted by Qin Tuo himself, without even taking a step back. This is too shocking. Qin Qing frowned slightly, and he realized that the situation was not simple. The changes caused by all this have long been beyond imagination, and Qin Tuo is definitely more terrifying than he imagined. Immediately afterwards, Qin Tuo gave a deep smile and slammed both fists at Qin Qing. Qin Qing relieved his strength with his palm, but was shocked to realize that when his strength touched him, it was like being swamped and swallowed quickly. Thousands of punches in a flash, each of them hit Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, and Cui Jing's immortal body heavily. Wow! They flew out and plunged heavily into the river of blood. However, this is only the beginning. Above the void, Qin Tuo was almost crazy. His clothes all over his body were shattered, his chest, the endless power surging out, and then turned into snakes, rushing into the river of blood. The blood river rolled up billions of blood waves, almost enveloping the entire scarlet world. With blood in the sky, Qin Tua's face was gloomy, and his eyes were like two rounds of blood mirrors, exuding a strange, inexplicable and breathtaking power. This blood-colored world, between illusion and reality, was facilitated by Qin Tua, and even Xianxian, who mastered the immortal style and was only one step away from Dianxian, could not escape. The only way to enter this world is death. Here, he is the supreme being who controls everything. Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, and Cui Jing were floating in the bleeding river at the same time, but they couldn't break free at all. Blood snakes entangled the fairy body, madly dragging them into the blood river. Damn thing, what is this guy's background? How can I repay the grievances of blood and energy? Cui Jing struggled and gasped. Both Qin Qing and Chun Qiu struggled to resist and could only barely protect themselves. This river of blood, and even this entire blood-colored world, are too weird. Their derivation power is fading fast, and they can't even make up for it. The arms were so tightly wound that they couldn't take the emperor pin pill that they carried with them. Chen Qingning looked at Qin Tua in the void, and then he let out a deep cry, and his whole body surged with extreme strength in an instant. Control the sky. Just like the collapse of a big day, a kind of extreme and pure power instantly swept across all fields. The blood snake wrapped around Qin Qing's body directly turned into powder. He broke free from the shackles, and then grabbed Chun Qiu and Cui Jing to get out of the sea of blood. This is Qin Qing's immortal style, his strongest blow. Under this blow, the entire blood mirror world trembles, and boundless cracks cover every corner. It's like a real mirror, about to shatter. But this situation only existed for a moment, and it was quickly repaired. Qin Tua sneered with Sen, then rushed directly to Qin Qing. The blood burst, swept up from the wild, and then came down. Qin Qing, who was wrapped in the ultimate pure power, pushed Chun Qiu and Cui Jing far away, and greeted Qin Tua alone. Boom! At this moment, it is as if thousands of stars burst. The immortal Yutian released by Qin Qing was so powerful that it almost instantly swallowed Qin Tua. The entire scarlet world is on the verge of collapse. Qin Qing, Chun Qiu and Cui Jing yelled anxiously. They wanted to give aid, but they were repelled by the huge energy. This terrible fluctuation does not last long, only a few dozen interest times. With Qin Qing flying backwards and retreating, it was over. Cui Jing has quick eyes and quick hands, and hastily released Yanli to support Qin Qing, who was flying backwards. Divine blood was spilled, the immortal body was covered with scars, his eyes closed tightly, and he was obviously fainted. Qin Tua is dead. Looking at the blood mist in the void, Chun Qiu realized that things might not be that simple. As if to confirm his thoughts, in the void, the thick blood mist gathered again, and the limbs grew rapidly. Qin Tua didn't suffer any damage at all, and even his whole body became stronger and stronger. Chun Qiu and Cui Jing stepped back slowly, looking at him solemnly. This blood-colored world is too weird, making things completely out of the original scope. A little careless, I am afraid they will never escape today. The danger this time is far more swift and unpredictable than anyone in 20,000 years. And what caused this result was only a fairy. Chapter 50-54. This is a big crisis. Qin Qing, Fengshan and Wei Liujia have all suffered, but Chun Qiu and Cui Jing are the only ones to support. Take care of Qin Qing, I will fight. After Cui Jing left this sentence, he rushed into the void resolutely. Facing Qin Tua, he tilted the 8-foot profound stick and rushed forward without hesitation. With a stick smashed, 100,000 Zhang Phantom was like a black dragon, shaking the sky and the earth. Qin Tua withdrew, raising his right hand, and suddenly condensed into a fist. In an instant, countless strands of blood-colored huameng rose from behind him, strangling the sky and the earth towards Cui Jing. OM. The meanings of blood red and black collided, and the shadow of the mysterious stick quickly shattered, but the blood color did not decrease, frantically strangling towards Cui Jing. Only in a moment, Cui Jing's figure was submerged in the torrent. Cui Jing! Chun Qiu was anxious, and he almost hugged Chen Qing into the river of blood in front of him. The entire chaotic sky was almost covered by a torrent of blood. Cui Jing was swallowed, and it was already difficult to escape. Qin Tuo stood with his hands behind and slowly came to the position where Cui Jing had stood before. In the next moment, the sudden change. The chaotic blood river was torn open a crack without any warning. Along with the blood river tearing apart, a powerful profound stick suddenly smashed out. Because this is happening too fast, even Qin Tuo can't react. Boom! Unparalleled violence, bloodthirsty breath broke out completely. Under this stick, Qin Tuo's entire right arm was smashed into pieces, turning into a handful of blood mist. Then Cui Jing walked out of the torrent like a demon god. He was covered in blood, and he lifted the profound stick diagonally in his hand. Facing the retreating Qin Tuo, he spit out a foam and said violently, "You are the same as an immortal, and you also have the qualifications to be rampant? Today I have to take out your immortal bones even with broken cultivation base." The smashed arm quickly recovered. Qin Tuo was furious, his arms emptied suddenly, and the endless stream of blood formed a shining mirror behind him. In the diamond mirror, an endless river of blood was reflected. Bah! Just pretend to be a fool. Cui Jing spit out another mouthful of blood and said grimly, "This diamond mirror is too vast, like a barrier connecting a super heavenly plane." Cui Jing stood in front of this diamond mirror like a chestnut in the ocean. In the huge diamond mirror, the river of blood surged, and then a vertical pupil appeared with a certain bewitching power. "Cui Jing, go back." Chun Qiu noticed something was wrong and reminded him anxiously, but it was too late. Cui Jing stood still on the spot, as if he was drawn out of his spirit. His eyes lost his expression, and then he jumped into the diamond mirror and was swallowed by the river of blood. Chun Qiu's face was pale. When there were 5 people, he was the only one left at the moment. This situation was too tragic. Feng Shan, Wei Liujia, and Cui Jing are all missing, and Chen Qing has also passed out. In this whole treacherous world, he is the only one who has the power to fight. He waved his hand to release Yan Li to hold Chen Qing in the void, and Chun Qiu stood in front of Qin Tuo. "Hand over them all, otherwise you will not be able to bear the consequences." Qin Tuo, who was soaked in blood, sneered coldly, "You mobs no longer have the strength to fight, and are you still trying to make a profit? Really, are you so sure that we don't have the power to fight?" Chun Qiu said with a smile. Qin Tuo didn't say anything. He was disgusted with Chunkius' rhetorical question. Just when he was about to cover it with a palm, the entire scarlet world shook suddenly. The shock was so severe that it instantly collapsed the earth, and the blood flow countered. Qin Tuo was shocked. His indifferent face was a little moved. The tremor of the entire scarlet world is due to external forces that cannot be ignored. However, Chun Qiu first stared nervously, and then a touch of joy appeared. He felt a familiar, domineering power. The originally dark sky began to shatter, and endless cracks twisted and swept across, almost covering the entire sky. The next moment, starting from the center of the crack, the entire sky collapsed and shattered in an instant, and the river of blood flowed backward. A pure to extreme force, pressing the blood river here. With the arrival of this sword-like figure, all blood qi dissipated, unable to enter him for hundreds of miles. The tooth-white robe fluttered in the wind, and the long black hair fluttered behind him, looking at Qin Tuo with a majestic look. He only felt that his divine consciousness was suddenly hit hard and he could not be beaten, and he almost fell directly. Qin Tuo snorted, backed a few steps, and then a ray of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. The visitor was terrible, and it was no longer comparable to ordinary evangelists that it could be done in just one face. He looked at the figure in the tooth-white uniform, and fear flashed in his eyes. "Brother Jian!" Chun Qiu shouted. Cui Jing and the others were all taken to unknown places by him. The person who came was Jian Wushuang. When he was about to come together before, he was forcibly pulled by Xiao Dijuan to take the medicine, so he didn't come with Chen Qing in time. But the current situation is far more severe than imagined. After listening to Chunkius' words, Jian Wushuang frowned and looked at Qin Tuo, who was like a blood gourd. For some reason, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. But he was sure that he had never seen Qin Tuo. "Hey, send them all back, I won't hold you accountable," Jian Wushuang said quietly, with unquestionable majesty, as if he was a notice, not a discussion. Qin Tuo was startled and then annoyed. "Send it back if you say you want it back? I'm afraid it's wishful thinking." Jian Wushuang was too lazy to spend his tongue, raising his hand and bending his fingers. In an instant, a pure and extreme sword aura rose up and down, slashing forward. This is an unstoppable sword energy. Even if Qin Tuo reacts, he can only choose to resist. Chirp. Divine blood was spilled, and the sword energy almost cut Qin Tuo into two. He snorted, and murderous intent appeared in his eyes, almost trying to break the fairy body, releasing endless blood. The blood qi transformed into 1,000,000 diamond mirrors, surrounding Jian Wushuang from every direction. Watching this scene, Spring and Autumn was shocked. "Brother Jian, run away." However, Jian Wushuang did not evade. Instead he looked at the 1,000,000-faced diamond mirror with great interest. Qin Tuo showed a cruel smile. No Yenxian could escape from him. This was self-confidence. But the next moment, great changes have taken place. Surrounded by a 1,000,000-faced blood-colored diamond mirror, a blue column of blue light rose into the sky, directly clearing the blood mist. At the same time, a treasure figure covering the heaven and the earth appeared, and the colorful shadows fell on the heaven and the earth. Baoxiang opened his eyes, an indescribable majesty swallowed everything. The entire blood mirror world couldn't bear this energy and quickly collapsed. The millions of diamond mirrors quickly turned into powder, collapsed and dissipated like a tide. Qin Tuo was shocked and hurried back, but it was already too late. Chapter 50-55. Under the pressure of Wushuang Baoxiang, all filth cannot exist. The millions of diamond mirrors were instantly emptied, and even the whole blood mirror world collapsed into nothingness. Qin Tuo was not spared. He was shattered by Wushuang Baoxiang's eyes and turned into a powder. After all, he is nothing but a fairy. Even if he is only one step away from dying, he is still a fairy. How can he withstand Jian Wushuang's full blow? Everything turned into ashes and nothingness, including the river of blood that surrounded the eternal, unparalleled temple. Qingling and the others opened the door of the temple, still very nervously searching for any crisis. Carrying Chen Qing's Chuanxiu, looking at the figure that was light and breezy from beginning to end, an uncontrollable excitement flashed in his eyes. Such a difficult battle was easily cracked by Jian Wushuang. This is enough to see that he has reached an unimaginable height in nearly 20,000 years after returning from the Sea of No Edge. In the spring and autumn at this moment, there is only excitement and happiness in my heart. But before the joy in his heart lasted long, he mentioned it again, because Qin Tuo, who had been destroyed by Jian Wushuang's immortal body, had actually condensed again. "Brother Jian, be careful," Chun Qiu shouted. Qin Tuo gave a deep smile and slammed Jian Wushuang's back with a palm. The terrible blood rushed forward instantly and pierced Jian Wushuang without any hindrance. Like a stone thrown into the lake, there are ripples. His figure disappeared like a cloud of smoke, which was very strange. Qin Tuo was startled. He realized what was wrong, and when he wanted to retreat, he realized that it was too late. Cold sweat gushed from his temples, and Qin Tuo clearly felt a finger against his neck. After a moment, a soft sound struck him, and he felt his head dizzy, and then his head and body separated. Waving his hand to cut off Qin Tuo's head, Jian Wushuang directly took his head and urged him to the front of the eternal Wushuang temple. "Sword, Lord Sword." Qin Ling was shocked and lost her voice, and immediately realized her failure and hurriedly lowered her head. Jian Wushuang nodded and smiled, then dropped Qin Tuo's head in the middle of the square. "Release them back and I will spare your life." With only one head left, Qin Tuo smiled slyly. "Do you think that if I eat it, will I vomit it out?" Jian Wushuang raised his brows. "Want to die?" "Of course I want to die, but no one can put my seed on." Without finishing a sentence, Jian Wushuang directly raised his foot and crushed Qin Tua's head. Chun Qiu was startled. Brother Jian, kill him, I'm afraid Feng Shan and the others. This is not his true fate, but just a shell. Jian Wushuang said, Feng Shan and the others should have been taken away by his true fate a long time ago. When Chun Qiu heard the words, he understood the meaning of the words. You go to Shaogudian and call that immortal Yen from some ancient sea city. He should know how to go. In the vast void, the four realms are moving forward quickly like the big sun and stars. They are all detached from the order, and they are all immortals. The leader is Jian Wushuang in white-toothed uniform. To his side are Chuan Qiu, Qin Qin who has just awakened, and Gyuding, the son of Geheiqing. Fucking, this time I go to their nest, I will kill him first. No one can escape. Qin Qin said angrily, obviously still remembering the previous things. Chun Qiu also agrees very much. Since taking this opportunity to find the sect of Shang Juanzong, there is no better way than destroying the sect in a battle. But Gu Ting seemed a lot more nervous. He escaped from Qin Tua's hands, naturally knowing Qin Tua's terrifying strength. Therefore, when he saw that the Wangu Wushuang auction house only went to 3 yenxian, he couldn't help feeling a little absurd. You know, Shang Juanzong is also one of the top superpowers in the entire Desai domain, and even Geheiqing must be a little afraid of existence. Just the number of immortals in the sect will never be less than 50. What's more, there are rumors that the sect master Shang Jun is already quasi-Dian immortal. With such a terrifying strength, Wangu Wushuang only dispatched 3 immortal immortals. From Gu Ting's point of view, this is almost the same as sending death. His injury is only stable. If he goes straight to Juanzong, there is absolutely no possibility of surviving. For the sake of his own fate, Gu Ting finally said, Several seniors, if we go straight to Shang Juanzong, would it be a bit too thin? Why don't I ask my ancestors for help? Jian Wushuang smiled upon hearing the words, no need. Immediately afterwards, Qin Qin waved his hand again. It's not necessary if there are only a few of us, even if you add your Guhai city to destroy Shang Juanzong, it is not easy. But it's different now. As long as there are sword brothers, even 10 Shang Juanzong are tied together, and it's definitely not enough to kill. Gu Ting's brow jumped, and he didn't know how to express his position. As the second in command of the eternal world, Qin Qing's words were obviously weighty, not to mention the presence of the top leader in spring and autumn, which invisibly increased credibility. But he still didn't believe it. He had to know that unless it was Dian Immortal, he could have the power to destroy an entire super-universe, and Qin Qin, Chuan Qiu, and the mysterious man obviously did not reach Dian Immortal's level. This is undoubtedly a gamble. Gu Ting gritted his teeth and didn't know what to do. It seems that he saw his worry. Jian Wushuang, who was walking forward with his hand, said in a low voice, just take us to find the location of Shang Juanzong. You won't need to visit by then, just leave. Gu Ting was startled, then bowed his head slightly embarrassed. The large division area developed by Zhen Weiyang is almost infinite, and it is a realm that gathered more than 10 former emperors, and the area is imaginable. However, after experiencing the Emperor's War in the Wangu era, the countless celestial planes in the realm have almost collapsed more than half. Even after infinite years, the cycle of the universe has not fully recovered. But even so, Yu reading www.ukanshu.com, some universe planes still take over the new heavens Fukuzawa and become a super-universe. And Shang Juanzong is naturally one of them. Under the guidance of Gu Ting, the heaven plane where Shang Juanzong was located quickly appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The huge heavenly gate is built in the void and is very magnificent. The fairy clouds are curled up and the auspicious cranes are mingling. It is quite a super sect aura. The word Shangjuan is embedded on the Tian Men, which is obviously where the Shangjuan Zongmen is located. Jian Wushuang was still very indifferent, carrying his hands on his back and moving forward leisurely. Qin Qing and Cui Jing followed closely, with undisguised murderous in their eyes. Gu Ting opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. He was struggling inside, wondering whether he should leave or stay. After a while, he gritted his teeth abruptly, made a decision, and then followed without looking back, and went straight to Shangjuanzong with Jian Wushuang. Chapter 50-56. The fairy clouds are curled up, and the auspicious mingling. This is a side of the land. Standing in the void is the Tianmen at the beginning of the Shangjuanzong portal. At this moment, several top repairers are guarding. The fairy rhyme is flowing, and behind the Tianmen is a huge fairy formation. Stop, Hifang Yanxian, our sect is not open to the outside world, please move forward. The breeze swept, and a Ding Xiu stationed outside Tianmen stretched out his hand to block Jian Wushuang's path. Before Jian Wushuang could speak, Chen Qing directly slapped the top repairman thousands of feet away, and immediately opened the door of Shangjuanzong. Afterwards, Jian Wushuang stepped slowly into the Tianmen. Behind the Tianmen is not the heavenly plane of Shangjuanzong, but a huge and chaotic fairy formation. Pretending to be A and playing a ghost, it's definitely not a good bird. Chen Qing said in a deep voice, and directly waved out a powerful training. But when Yenlipi Lian hit the fairy formation, he was easily absorbed and couldn't break it. I'm afraid I can't forcibly break here, the fairy formation has been set up. Chun Qiu said thoughtfully. As soon as his voice fell, Jian Wushuang directly raised his hand and easily tore the barrier on the immortal formation. Let's go. He motioned, and then stepped into the fairy formation. Earlier when he went to Demetian of Gongzi Jiao, Jian Wushuang had felt the mystery of teleporting the fairy formation. It was very good, and he could instantly go anywhere within the path of the fairy formation. The origin of the teleportation immortal array has long been untraceable, but it has completely flourished from the time of Zhenuyang. If you want to destroy the heavens in a vertical and horizontal manner, a large-scale dispatch of the eternal fairy is extremely important, and Zhen Wuyang also used the characteristic of the immortal formation to transmit, successfully destroying the heavens from one side to another. It is precisely because of this that even though endless years have passed, the role of the fairy formation is still retained in some super-universes. When they thought about it, they stood on the ground covered by a fairy cloud. This is Shangjuanzong? Why doesn't it look like a place where dirt is hidden? Chen Qing touched his chin and looked at Gu Ting. At the moment, Gu Ting was extremely nervous. Well, this should be where Shangjuan sect is located. I also passed by with the elders of the clan hundreds of millions of years ago and never visited this place. Don't worry, let's talk about it. Chen Qing said in a deep voice. At this time, Jian Wushuang said, don't do anything for the time being. If the Shangjuanzong is indeed a good and large party, let them go. If not, it's not too late to do it again. In spring and autumn, Chen Qingyiding nodded at the same time. The fairy clouds are curled up, the fairy mountains are towering, the endless green fairy trees are growing vigorously, and the primitive pavilions are like horned dragons, hibernating quietly in the fairy mountains. At this moment, it is in the morning dew, and some disciples have begun to breathe in the morning, practicing diligently in their respective dojos. Jian Wushuang walked forward with his hands down, and he didn't even look at these Shangjuanzong disciples. His goal was very clear, and he went straight to the hall of Shangjuanzong. Soon, the disciples of Shangjuanzong found the uninvited guests and began to gather in the direction of the hall. The Great Hall of King Juanzong is located at the very center of the entire vast horizon plain, occupying the most powerful place. It was only a few dozen breaths of time before Jian Wushuang set foot on the main hall square. The square is magnificent, the hall is vast and magnificent to the extreme. At the very center of the square, there is a huge sundial, in which every direction corresponds to a star. Chen Qing stood directly on the sundial, yelling with halberd fingers, "Old song-bearded thief in the temple, get out of here!" As if boiling water rose sharply, the hall opened, and more than a dozen old men wearing ink robes walked out quickly, all in an unrelenting appearance. At a glance, Jian Wushuang knew that these old men were all immortals. A long-bearded old man looked bad. Where is the crumbly young man, dare to stand on the sundial? Don't you know how the death character is written? Chen Qing sneered, disdainfully said, "Why, do you want to tell?" The long-bearded old man was so angry that the ancient staff in his hand suddenly slammed, and in an instant a pure force rushed forward. Chen Qing directly raised his hand with a wave, and shattered the Yanli that had hit him. Don't use the skill of Yehu Zen to be embarrassing, so I won't kill you. Chen Qing roared angrily, hand over Qin Tu, otherwise you will die. With huge sounds, all the elders and disciples took a step back, their expressions solemn. It was the long-bearded old man who stepped forward and said, Junior, Shangjuanzong is not the place where you wait for madness. It's still too late to walk so as not to be hit hard. Let's go, of course, and return my 3 brothers first. Chun Qiu stepped forward and said in a condensed voice. The long-bearded old man trembled his brows. He obviously knew something, but he still said, I have never stepped out of the sect for millions of years. I don't know the whereabouts of your brother. I think there must be some misunderstanding. Old thief, dare you open your eyes and tell nonsense? Chen Qing smirked and slammed all the elders. The elders all reacted and hurriedly resisted. Chen Qing had already understood his own fairy style, only a short distance from Dian Immortal. He was a quasi-Dian Immortal, and with a full blow, it was enough to make ordinary Immortal unbearable. The 15 elders resisted with all their might before Chen Qing struck. The long-bearded old man almost stood unstable, and blood surged in the fairy body. Chen Qing shouted in a cold voice, Leave me away if you don't want to die. Today I'm here to beg for justice. If you persist in retreating, don't blame Lao Zi for destroying the clan. As soon as this statement came out, all Shangjuanzong disciples were in an uproar, and then quickly backed away. The face of the long-bearded old man changed several times, and finally he looked at the elder on the side and winked secretly. Then, the 2 elders quickly entered the temple. I think there must be some misunderstanding in this, please stop for a while. The long-bearded old man took a deep breath and said slowly. Chen Qing stopped talking, calm instead, and turned to look at Jian Wushuang, who looked calm. In front of the main hall, in the center of the square, there was a short silence. After a few breaths, Jian Wushuang moved, and he moved forward slowly. Gu Ting on the side brows. For some reason, every time he sees Jian Wushuang he will involuntarily become nervous, as if he is staring into an unknown abyss, unable to explore. At the same time, Gu Ting's heart also has a faint expectation. What kind of existence is Jian Wushuang, who can make Wushuang's first and second in command willing to go with him? Soon he saw an almost unimaginable scene. Jian Wushuang was alone, facing more than a dozen Shangjuanzong elders, just raised his hand and flicked them all away. More than a dozen Shangjuanzong elders who had been immersed in Yanxian for countless years, all flew out, smashed the door of the palace heavily, and then rolled into the hall. Chapter 50-57. The facade of the quaint and solemn hall was smashed with dozens of holes, which was ridiculous and funny. More than a dozen elders Yanxian all turned into a ground gourd. They didn't even have time to release Yanli, they were lying like old dogs in the hall. Dead silence, silent dead silence. Nearly 1,000 disciples who came to the great hall of Shangzhenzong all had a panoramic view of this scene, completely dumbfounded. Their elders, who are highly respected and unfathomable in strength, are actually drawn into a gourd? Gu Ting was dumbfounded, and even blinked hard, trying to see if it was an illusion. This is too unimaginable. With just a slap, more than a dozen immortals flew away. Looking around, except Dian immortals, I am afraid that even quasi-Dian immortals can't do it. But right now, this scene actually happened. Zhu Zi looking for death. The 13 elders of Shangjuanzong rushed out of the hall and blasted towards Jian Wushuang, headed by the long-bearded old man. At this moment, time seemed to stagnate, and the perception of every cultivator and disciple present seemed to slow down. Only Jian Wushuang, his actions remained the same, he stepped up one step at a time. Seeing the elders who came from all directions, he seemed uninterested. But he still raised his hand, feel free. Sword intent. Puff! A clear tearing sound came into the ears of every monk present. Then the 13 elders snorted at the same time and flew out again. As they fell to the ground, the colorful blood of the gods spilled down the jade steps, forming a blood path. The 13 elders and 13 Yenxian all had their right arms abolished at that moment. Divine blood flowed from their broken arms, dyed with red jade steps. Only fear was left in their eyes, holding the broken arm and backing continuously. Jian Wushuang, who was wearing a tooth-white uniform, still did not get a trace of blood stains, and moved forward slowly, climbing up the steps. I will give you one last chance. Should I die here for unknown reasons, or let your sect master come out? Jian Wushuang said quietly, without any waves. The headed long-bearded old man was holding his broken arm, his face pale. Junior, do you know this is an enemy of my entire Shangjuanzong? So what? He raised his brow. Qing, here comes the sword. Come. On the square, Qing laughed and drew out the real sword from his waist and threw it at Jian Wushuang. Jing dash, the true sword screamed, broke through the clouds and mist, and fell straight into his hands. As if seeing his intention, the long-bearded old man trembled in his heart and lost his voice. No. But it was too late. Jian Wushuang used his hand to lead the sword, bursting out the most brilliant trend. At this moment, it seemed to be broken for thousands of days, and the fringe-like strength was flowing and blooming. All monks, Yenxian couldn't look directly at him. A sword slashed out, and the hall that stood up for countless years was shattered. Carved beams and painted buildings turned into ruined walls, pavilions are broken into powder. The flow of order, heaven, collapsed and collapsed, no longer existed. One sword, destroy the sect. The fringe-like strength of Yen was spilt, and all the disciples of Shangjuanzong opened their eyes, and then their faces were pale. The pavilions, terraces and pavilions have become flat ground, and everything is gone. Qing was extremely excited with his boxing palm, and after a glance with Chun Qiu, he went to Jian Wushuang's side. Gu Ting was completely shocked, his chest fluctuated violently. This scene was too shocking. The foundation of Shangjuanzong turned into dust under this sword. He has a strong intuition that Shangjuanzong is in danger today. Before the shattered hall, Jian Wushuang returned the sword to Qing, and without seeing the deadly elders of Shangjuanzong, he walked straight into the ruins. His goal is to find Cui Jing, Wei Liujia and Fengshan. No one can stop them. Soon, Jian Wushuang stopped moving forward. Because there was a small and rickety figure that blocked his way forward. You can't move forward anymore, said the thin, rickety figure, with a hoarse and firm voice. Of course you can. Return the 3 Yanxians you shouldn't touch. I won't go into further details. Jian Wushuang said simply. Unexpectedly, the rickety figure shook his head. It is no longer possible. The Shangjuanzong Tiandian was destroyed by you, enough to offset the lives of the 3 Yanxians. Jian Wushuang sneered coldly. It seems that you don't plan to hand them over? You guys please come back, otherwise the consequences will definitely not be acceptable to you. Rickety figure continued. Chun Qiu, do it. Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. Chen Qingchunqiu responded, without any hesitation, and went straight forward. And the mysterious, rickety figure also set off. His figure is extremely agile, like a ghost, brazenly responding. With 2 fists and 4 palms, the horrible force of power swept directly like a torrent. Like the great sound of ancient times, it resounds through the sky, and it can be empty. Under the impact of Qing and Chun Qiu, the rickety figure was carried down abruptly, without taking a step back. Then he shook his arms and flew Qing and Chun Qiu tens of feet away. Looking for death. Qing screamed, blasting out with a fist, piercing the sky with his fist, causing the sky to change. And Chun Qiu also started, a short sword with purple patterns all over his body, protruding from his sleeve, and stabbed forward fiercely. This is the full blow of the 2 pinnacles. Rickety figure stood in place, did not evade, chose to resist the blow hard. Boom! The ruins and broken walls were instantly shattered into powder, and all the disciples of Shangjuanzong who were present were all retreats, and were scattered to pieces. The rickety figure, back 10 feet, cut a dagger deep into his heart, dripping with blood dripping on the ground. Let's go. Jian Wushuang gave a deep cry before moving forward. You can't go. The rickety figure opened his arms and tried to stop. Jian Wushuang no longer paid attention to him, stretched out his hand to release Yanlabilian to bind him, and then walked to the depths of the ruined wall. The entire Shangzhenzong Hall, and even the plains, were completely disrupted, creating a doomsday scene. One sword destroyed the Great Hall of Shangzhenzong. Jian Wushuang did not rush to kill, but followed the Ryuruo breath and walked into the depths of the Great Hall. Does it have to be so? A low, Ryuruo voice resounded from the ruins, with a certain bewitching aura. Jian Wushuang stopped and looked forward indifferently. After a few breaths, the entire space was trembling, and then strands of gray power appeared like mist, and then gathered into a black-robed figure. This black robe was slender and extremely skinny, and his face was extremely weird like a skeleton. I have no intention of destroying your Shangzhenzong. I just came to find my friends. Jian Wushuang said, Let them return and I will return. A long wind arose from the ruins, making everything strange. Chapter 50-58. Hypo was silent, his eyes fixedly looking at Jian Wushuang. You guys, are you here to prevent my son from ascending the place of Dian Immortal? When Jian Wushuang heard the words, his heart sank and he felt bad. Say, where are they? If you don't tell, Shangzhenzong has one count, and it will definitely die miserably. The figure of the black robe is the sect master Qin Zun of Shangzhuan, and Qin Tuo is the son of his seat. Facing Jian Wushuang's yelling question, he turned a deaf ear, and his eyes began to show anger. All the elders of Shangzhenzong, the disciples followed the orders and rushed to the Tiange quickly to capture and kill the invading enemy. Jian Wu was cold. Do you want all the disciples of the whole school to bury you? It is you. Qin Zun said angrily, You are nothing but a little Yenxian, and I can kill you by flipping my hands. Jian Wushuang was disgusted and directly raised his hand and drew a palm towards him. Unparalleled strength swept up in an instant, carrying Wanjin's momentum to cover it. Qin Zun also reacted and suddenly raised his arms, soaring into the sky, directly smashing Jian Wushuang's offensive. As the sect master of Shangzhuan, he had already understood his immortal style several years ago, and he was only a short distance from Dian Immortal. Facing Jian Wushuang, who was only the realm of immortality, he naturally didn't put it in his eyes. But afterwards, Qin Zun realized how absurd his ideas were. Jian Wushuang was uncharacteristically, his eyes rushed forward with a touch of blood. Its speed was so fast that when Qin Zun reacted, a heavy fist slammed his chest. A crisp bone cracking sounded, his chest sank directly, and then his whole figure flew upside down and fell into the ruins. Jian Wushuang's figure was like a ghost, and the moment Qin Zun landed, he had already arrived in front of him, and he slammed down again. The clear bone crack sounded again. Even if Qin Zun was a quasi-Dian immortal, the immortal body was so strong that he was still inferior to Jian Wushuang after all. The dust flew up, and violent shock waves waved up. All the elders of Shangzhenzong who came after hearing Qin Zun's orders, and his disciples were afraid to step forward. The blood is lingering, almost like a sea of blood. This is Jian Wushuang's way of killing, and only his way of killing can burst out such pure blood. In 10 breaths of time, a total of 10,000 punches hit Qin Zun's immortal body without fail. When Jian Wushuang stopped, he was already dying. The fairy bones were smashed to pieces and could never be recovered in a short time. Slowly exhaling a turbid breath, he raised his hand and threw Qin Zun like a dead dog from a distance, and then stared at the ground under his feet. Adding to the way of killing, Jian Wushuang's sensitivity to blood has reached an unprecedented level, and he smelled the unrest on the ground under his feet. This is the most central part of the Great Hall of King Juanzong, and it is also the place where the strength and blood is strongest, and Qin Tuo's hiding place is very likely here. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated, turning his right hand together, and an invisible sword appeared. Then he thrust the invisible sword into the ground heavily. The next moment, the whole fairy mountain was shaking, and an indescribable wave broke out. All the elders and disciples of Shangzhenzong were retired from Baizhang again. Even Qin Qing and Chuanqiu could not stop and were forced to withdraw from Baizhang. The fairy clouds receded, the whole towering fairy mountain was densely covered with cracks, and the pure meaning of red gold flowed in the cracks. Then the fairy mountain shattered and turned into heavy rocks and fell into the mountain stream. As the fairy mountain shattered, a mass of blood rose from it like a scorching sun. The blood was chaotic, exuding a weird color, and the center was a dark black that couldn't be seen directly, and even Jian Wushuang could not see what was hidden in it. But the breath that this blood radiated seemed to have crossed that hurdle. Along with this blood qi ascending, the entire heaven plane was infiltrated with blood qi and turned dark red. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he felt the inexplicable familiarity again. The blood qi gradually dissipated, and the chaos at the center was a figure. He was Qin Tuo, who had his head severed earlier. At this moment, his whole body is covered with dark red dense lines, and in the void behind him, there is a round of closed eye wheels hanging high. The aura that Qin Tuo exudes far surpasses that of Yanxian and truly reaches the realm of Dianxian. Although there is only a short line between Yanxian and Dianxian, it is an unimaginable gap. 99% of Yanxian can't break through. Only Yanxian with less than 1 point can ascend the place of Dianxian. The difficulty of this is impossible to describe. Jian Wushuang frowned. At this moment, he didn't care if Qin Tuo was Dian immortal. What he worried most was the whereabouts of Cui Jing and the others. Is this the thought that Dian immortal can control? It's really wonderful. Qin Tuo smiled slyly, then looked forward. With eyes facing each other, Qin Tuo took the lead in attacking. With a flick of his hand, the chain of heavenly Tao constructed by Yanli was directly wound towards Jian Wushuang. The sword intent was brilliant, rising into the sky. Facing the chain of heaven and earth, millions of sword intents gathered on the front line, brazenly responded. Zheng dash, the heavens and the earth trembled, and at this moment the chains of the heavenly Tao were directly shattered, and the millions of sword intents were cast away, directly strangling Qin Tuo. The dark red blood surged directly into a collision. Not only that, the huge eye wheel hanging in the void behind Qin Tuo also slowly opened at this moment. The vertical pupil is cold, without any emotions, and some are just bewitching and intriguing. With the opening of this eye chakra, everything quietly changed. Whenever he stares at him, even Yanxian is directly lost. At this moment, all the disciples and even the elders of Shangjuanzong were lost, and then frantically fighting each other. Gu Ting was shocked, and he was almost lost, but Qin Qing slapped him back into reality and watched this scene in shock with his face covered. Don't look at that eye, I can save you once, but I may not save you a second time. After Qin Qing asked him, calm and said nothing. After working together to build the barrier, Chun Qiu looked at Jian Wushuang's back with concern. This kind of bewitching power was too weird, and you might get lost if you were not careful. Once Jian Wushuang gets lost, things will probably become completely uncontrollable. Facing the bewitching eye wheel, Jian Wushuang frowned. As the great perfection of divine mind, he can naturally feel the bewitching power emanating from the eye chakra, which mainly erodes divine thought. If ordinary Yanxian is careless, I am afraid he will get lost. Are you confused enough? Jian Wushuang frowned, then raised his hand and slapped it. This slap with infinite sword intent, like a hurricane, easily cut the chains of the heavens, and came to Qin Tuo's immortal body and the huge eye wheel behind him. Qin Tuo didn't expect Jian Wushuang to be deceived, nor did he expect that he would counterattack so quickly. So that he didn't even react, and he abruptly withstood the heavy blow. Chapter 50-59. The sky was directly shattered into a deep gully, exposing the void raging by the wind. However, Qin Tuo was like a kite with a broken line, flying upside down thousands of feet away, smashing several gods and celestial mountains to stop his figure. Sword intent hovered all over the sky, pointing directly at Qin Tuo. The eye wheel in the void looked at everything like a totem. You wanna die? Qin Tuo roared and walked out of the broken fairy mountain. He waved his arms, rushing out one after another with powerful force, entwining Xiang Jian Wushuang. Noisy! Jian Wushuang looked coldly, stretched out his hand and shook it, and immediately crushed all the entangled Yanli. Then he rushed towards Qin Tu. With a heavy blow, the fist pierced the air, and all the blood mist was instantly cleared. This is a punch that contains the way of killing, enough to make Dian immortal even unable to bear it. However, Qin Tu resisted, his entire chest collapsed and shattered, and tassel-like strength poured into the void. He couldn't believe that a little Yanxian could cause such a heavy injury to him. You know, between Yanxian and Dianxian, that sky can't be crossed at all, let alone harm Dianxian? But now it actually happened. Divine blood spurted and the fairy body shattered, but after only a few dozen breaths of time, all healed. In Qin Tua's eyes, only madness remained. He has been suppressed by Jian Wushuang, even if he is still passive even when he is in Dianxian, this makes him almost crazy. The boundless dark red blood mist condensed into chains, smashed from the void, penetrating every inch of the earth, the fairy mountain. The elder Shang Juanzong, who had been lost, and his disciples did not dodge at all, staring blankly at the void, and then being pierced by chains falling from the sky, turning them into powder. Jian Wushuang frowned, and the invisible sword condensed again, piercing the void, cutting off the chains. His mother, isn't this beast going crazy? How come he doesn't let his own sect disciple let him go? In the enchantment, Chen Qing was struggling to resist. It should be those eyes that are playing tricks, try to get them down, Chun Qiu said in a deep voice, looking at the eye wheel hovering in the void. I want to find a way. Chen Qing gritted his teeth and thought. The true sword draped around his waist was directly out of the sheath, carrying a million sword intent to cut towards the void eye wheel. The dark red eye wheel is extremely huge, almost dividing the sky into two. The pupils are extremely chaotic, and the bewitching breath is emitted from the center of the vertical pupil. Millions of sword intent, condensed into a huge true sword, pierced the strange eye wheel with a shocking shock. The next moment, a treacherous scene appeared. The million sword intent stabbed into the eye chakra without any hindrance, but it was nothing more than that, like a mud cow entering the sea, without causing any explosion, the eye chakra was completely unharmed. No, I'm afraid I'm in big trouble. Chen Qing's lips trembled slightly, as if foreseeing something terrible. Next, as if to confirm his thoughts, the eye wheels in the void suddenly trembled, and then a huge true sword stained with dark red blood fog shot out, returning to the original road and heading straight to Chen Qing. The knot of spring and autumn cut off the world. Chen Qing was shocked and fled directly with Chuanqiu. Boom! The huge true sword fell down, the earth was shattered and thousands of fairy mountains collapsed at this moment. All the elders and disciples who came from Shang Juanzong were buried in the end, leaving no trace. With a panoramic view of this scene, Jian Wushuang turned his head to look at Qin Tua. You think, never die? So what? The final result will definitely be your death. Qin Tua said coldly. In that case, it's as you wish. After he finished speaking, the invisible sword in his hand suddenly slashed towards Qin Tua. The void collapsed, endless sword intent galloping horizontally and horizontally. Qin Tua roared, the meridians above the immortal body rose up, and his stature suddenly increased several times. Immediately afterwards, a dark red treasure that shook the sky and the earth condensed behind him. The treasure is too huge, shocking the sky, as if shrouded in clouds and smoke. It is generally unreal, only the hazy outline can barely be seen. Moreover, the dark red treasure behind Qin Tua was entangled by chains protruding from the void, restricting his movement. As soon as Baoxiang came out, his aura climbed several levels steeply, reaching an unprecedented level, and even Jian Wushuang felt the crisis. I'm the Dian Immortal, and what are you? Qin Tua roared, his 5 fingers stretched out, and hundreds of millions of threads of blood burst out suddenly. Facing the glow that covered the sky, Jian Wushuang walked forward with his hand holding his hand, his eyes indifferent. His whole body has been quietly covered with a light golden glow, easily resisting the blood glow like a needle like a sword. Qin Tua was secretly surprised. Although he had already reached the realm of Dian Immortal, Jian Wushuang's calmness and determination still made him palpitate inexplicably. Therefore, he decided to make a move, and the dark red treasure behind the chain was restored. Bao Xiang raised his arm, covering Jian Wushuang with a palm large enough to cover the sky. The tremor of the void seemed to be unable to bear this kind of power, and might collapse at any time. Rumble! The giant sound pierced the wilds and wilds, and the red gold and the dark red collided, and the impact that broke out directly cleared the void, making the entire celestial plane unbearable and beginning to be fragmented. The palm that the dark red treasure smashed was also shattered, and an extremely eye-catching figure resembling the stars of the big sun came to Qin Tua's face in a flash. Yijing was too fast, and when he reacted, Jian Wushuang was already standing in front of him. How about Dian Immortal? Along with this indifferent voice fell the coldness of a sword penetrating the fairy body. Qin Tua only felt a burst of unspeakable pain spread all over the limbs, and then he looked down at his chest subconsciously. At the mouth of the heart, an invisible sword was completely submerged, and the blood spewed out. It is an unimaginable scene to cut off the body of Dian Immortal with the power of immortality. Qin Tua wanted to fight back, but found that he couldn't do it even with a single finger. His own power seemed to have found a catharsis, madly used from the broken heart. But Jian Wushuang's eyes were still calm and cold, as if killing a Dian Immortal was a simple matter for him. "Tell you, I will spare you the whereabouts of the 3 Yangtzeans," he said indifferently, his voice beyond doubt. The intense crisis of annihilation made Qin Tua horrified. He opened his mouth. They are all. He didn't finish saying the sentence. He suddenly changed his expression, savagely. "Want to know their whereabouts? Then go with them." Jian Wushuang realized what was wrong, but it was too late. A Dian Immortal, the power that burst out at the time of life and death, was far beyond imagination. Qin Tua directly embraced him and rushed into the void. There, hovering aside of the eye wheel, the huge dark red eye wheel, exuding a bewildering general trend, it is extremely curious. Chapter 50-60? It's like crashing into the water, rippling layers. Qin Tua pushed Jian Wushuang, plunged into the huge eyes, and disappeared. His eyes were round, and billions of dark red blood burst out. Under this glow, Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, and Gu Ting couldn't make any progress, so they could only fight hard in place. "His mother, I am dead today, and I have to go in too," Chen Qing shouted hoarsely against his blood. The immortal styles came out together, withstanding the great pressure for a while, and then Chen Qing and Chun Qiu plunged into the eye wheel without any hesitation. Gu Ting fought a cold fight, and various complex expressions flashed on his face. After a while, he gritted his teeth abruptly. "Wait for me, I am here too." "Here, isn't it the inner world of the eye chakra?" The echo was so ethereal and ethereal. Looking into the eyes, this is a mysterious world. Everything is made up of extremely clear mirrors. At this moment, Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, and Gu Ting stand in the world made up of mirrors, with dignified eyes. "Where do you think Brother Jian will be?" Chun Qiu said worriedly. "Don't worry, that guy won't be able to use the sword brother for a while." Chen Qing said relievedly, "We have to figure out what this place is now." At this moment, Gu Ting, who hadn't spoken for a long time, spoke, and his voice trembled slightly. "Have you noticed any different changes behind you?" Chen Qinghe Chuanqiu was puzzled, and turned his head to look subconsciously. Behind them, 3 figures emerged from the world in the mirror. And after seeing the faces of the 3 figures, even in the relatively calm spring and autumn period, I couldn't help but explode. How could this be us? The 3 figures that emerged from the world in the mirror are the same as those of Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, and Gu Ting, and they are exactly the same. Even their walking posture is exactly the same. It is precisely because of this that Chuanqiu is instantly alert. "There is weirdness here. I am afraid these guys have been copied. Be careful," Chun Qiu warned in a low voice. In the next moment, the 3 figures who walked out of the world in the mirror moved, rushing in instantly like a ghost. "Be careful," Chen Qing shouted angrily, and then released the Yanli barrier with 5 fingers and halberds. But on the other side, the headed Chen Qing also moved. He also raised his arm and exploded with a violent and swift force. The 6 body shapes started fighting. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who was dragged into the world of eyes by Qin Tuo, also encountered this kind of crisis. Qin Tuo didn't know where he had disappeared. Instead, he was replaced by a height and face, all the same as Jian Wushuang. He frowned and stepped back into a defensive posture. And that Jian Wushuang had no wave of brows and eyes, and between the palms of his hands, an invisible sword exuding a touch of golden light appeared. Jian Wushuang raised his brows. He didn't expect that this image could actually condense an invisible sword. The invisible sword is his kendo transformation, and the image can condense the invisible sword, then it also indicates that Wushuang Kendo has also been controlled. The whole cards are known before they have played against each other, which is extremely tricky for Jian Wushuang. Sure enough, the image of Jian Wushuang has already released the sword intent when the pure golden meaning of Wushuang swordsmanship rises vertically. Unparalleled Kendo, the first style of the galaxy. A sword cut straight, breaking the sky and the earth, the void was cut open by a sky, and the mirror under his feet was instantly shattered, but it was recovering at a faster speed. Jian Wushuang never thought that one day he would feel the taste of his own kendo. Thousands of sky-reaching red-golden beams burst, and endless sword intent swept into them. He also moved at this moment. The same is the first style of Wushuang Kendo. A more magnificent and wanton sword intent rises vertically and horizontally, covering the sky and the sun, and the sword intent is brilliant. The two collided, and the great fluctuations directly swept across the sky. Rumble. The mirror world began to collapse and shattered, tearing out the cracks in the sky. The sword intents cancel each other out and vanish. When the dust and smoke dissipated, they looked at each other. Jian Wushuang didn't expect that the image would have copied Wushuang Kendo's books without weakening the power. This is undoubtedly more tricky. If you continue to fight, I am afraid you will fall into stalemate and passivity. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang planned to leave directly. But the image seemed to know his intentions, and directly released the second style of Wushuang Kendo. River. As the second style of Wushuang Kendo, the sword meaning of river is the strongest sword besides the sword meaning of lake. Hundreds of thousands of strands of sword intent condensed into a towering tianhe, swept down from the void. This tianhe was so prosperous that it blocked the void, and the terrifying sword intent made everything tremble. This sword is the sword of the pinnacle. Jian Wushuang stared. He felt the crisis. The next moment he also moved. The red gold sword intent was brilliant, rising from his body, quickly converging into a tianhe, and suddenly rushing forward. Two heavenly rivers, two rivers of sword intent, completely collided and broke out. This is the absolute sword intent, enough to easily tear any heavenly plane. Even Dian Immortal can never bear it. The speed of repairing the mysterious world in the mirror couldn't keep up with the speed of destruction. In just an instant, the whole world fell apart. As the fragments flew, the sword intent of the river word dissipated, and the image of Jian Wushuang retreated 100 feet. Jian Wushuang was also quite uncomfortable, and the blood surged in the Xian's body, threatening to suffer severe damage. The pressure of Wushuang Kendo was almost unbearable even for him. The damage to the image is obviously more serious, and blood has been spilled from the wound. Death-seeking behavior, Jian Wushuang said coldly. And the image seemed to be fully restored in a short time, looking at him coldly. Then, a bright golden glow quietly rose from the image, and quickly lifted into the sky, turning into thousands of threads of red gold tassels. Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed suddenly, and his steady heart throbbed at this moment. The image turned out to be the strongest sword intended to completely release Wushuang Kendo. Lake-style sword meaning is a sword beyond imagination. It is unstoppable, unable to contend, and can only choose to endure a sword. Once the lake-style sword intent appears again, the consequences will be unimaginable. You know, at the beginning, Jian Wushuang used his own power to cross-border to kill Chang Duoling, the Nine Heavens Immortal Monarch, who was already the third-ranked Dian Immortal, and he used the lake-shaped sword intent. One sword kills 3 ranks, already can't imagine. No matter how strong Jian Wushuang is, he is still an immortal after all. Facing the lake-shaped sword intent, he is not sure that he can take it. The radiant red-golden flower has turned into hundreds of thousands of tassels, building a heavenly gate. The image of Jian Wushuang was wrapped in Jin Mang, his face was deep and cold, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. But then, his expression suddenly changed, and an incredible expression appeared. Chapter 5061. The Tianmen, which represents the sword intent of the lake character, is still being constructed. But the complexion of the image became extremely terrifying, as if it had encountered something uncontrollable. The tooth-white suit on his body suddenly shattered, revealing a symmetrical fairy body. Immediately afterwards, his fairy body suddenly expanded several times, swelling to the extreme. Cracks spread across his fairy body, and the blood of the gods began to spill. Jian Wushuang backed away. He noticed something was wrong and frowned. Could it be that he can't bear the power of the sword intent of the lake character? As if to confirm what he was thinking, the image began to roar in pain. The dark red blood light began to drill out of his fairy body and collapsed. After nearly 10 breaths of time, the image shattered under Jian Wushuang's gaze. As the strongest sword of Wushuang Kendo, it also died with the wind, and even Tianmen did not condense. Good fellow, I actually broke myself to death. Jian Wushuang was thoughtful, but soon became vigilant again. This mirror world was far more treacherous than expected, and he had to be careful. Qin Tua must have not died, but hidden anywhere here. What he has to do now is to catch him. After the collision of the sword intent of the river character, the mirror world in this eye chakra has completely disintegrated, but it is still recovering. Looking at it, it was empty and silent. Jian Wushuang tried to call the names of Qin Qing and Chun Qiu, but there was no answer. Stepping on the mirror reflecting the shadow, he walked slowly. Everything is dead to the extreme, only the shadow follows. After walking 1,000 steps, Jian Wushuang stopped his figure and suddenly said, "Is it enough?" The next moment, he stomped his foot suddenly, the mirror shattered, and a dark red blood rose up. Qin Tua looked cold. Tinglin Shukong stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't bother to talk nonsense with him. After a 7-star system lit up between his eyebrows, he directly raised his hand to call out immortal style. A bit of mountains and rivers. The sacred mountain suddenly rose from the ground and turned into a cage for imprisonment, and Tianhe swept into a chain and directly wounded Qin Tua. The sky fire came and burned everything. This is the first time Jian Wushuang has used the immortal style since he walked out of the Sea of No Edge. He is growing, Xianshi is also growing, and he has long been different from earlier. Qin Tua was imprisoned in the mountains and bound by the Tianhe, but he couldn't get out of it. Jian Wushuang walked slowly in front of him, waved away the burning sky fire, and looked at him calmly. "Where are they?" Qin Tua gritted his teeth. The great horror between life and death has forced him to bow his head for the last time. Seeing that he was still hesitating, Jian Wushuang didn't ask any more, but flicked his fingers and forced a pure sword intent into his fairy body. Ugh! Qin Tua roared in pain. The wisp of sword intent madly shuttled through the meridian. Every time it passed, the meridian was completely shredded, and the pain even Dianxian could not bear. Jian Wushuang did not speak, but forced one after another sword intent into his fairy body. The blood spurted and Qin Tua couldn't hold on anymore. They are all in here. He raised his brows slightly when he heard the words, then looked at the world made up of Lingjing, thinking about the truth and falsehood of Qin Tua's words. After a while, Jian Wushuang's 5-finger halberds opened, and his force was released to blast towards the ground under the mirror. Boom boom, the earth quickly shattered, and strands of dark red blood gush out from the broken place. If I dismantled this place and didn't see them, you would definitely be worse than dead. Jian Wushuang said coldly, and then completely released his own power, crushing the sky. Even Qin Tua trembled with the extreme violent generative power. The entire diamond mirror world was on the verge of breaking, but in the next moment, a huge dark red eye will came to the void. The bewitching and intriguing aura flew away, staring straight at Jian Wushuang. Disgusted in his heart, a million sword intent suddenly appeared behind him, swept toward the eye wheel. This time, the eye chakra did not swallow and absorb, but let the sword intent strangle and finally shattered into powder. Seeing this situation, Qin Tuo was shocked and couldn't believe it. And with the destruction of the eye wheel, the world that was repaired quickly is no longer being repaired, and it finally collapses. Qin Tuo's breath is also rapidly languishing. The independent world in this square's eye will completely collapsed, and they returned to the real heavenly plane. On the ruins of Shangjuanzong, Qin Qin, Chun Chiu and Gu Ting were all surprised. "Back? Are you back?" Then, another bull-like figure fell from the sky and smashed into the ruins. There were two more plops. The two figures also fell, and they smashed into the back of the bull like a stack of arhats. Cui Jing and Liu Jia. Qin Qing was startled first, then ecstatic. "Good guys, they are all back." Chun Chiu hurried forward to pull them up from the ruins. After detecting that they were all asleep, and there was no major illness, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Where is brother's sword?" Qin Qing turned around and hurriedly explored around. Gu Ting pointed his finger forward, swallowing hard. Looking in the direction of his fingers, Jian Wushuang stood in the ruins, holding Qin Tu's neck with one hand, his expression indifferent. The blood of the gods was spilled, and he almost became a blood man, already angrily. "Let go of my son." A weak voice sounded, and Shangjuan sect Master Qin Zun stumbled out of the ruins and ran towards Jian Wushuang. But then, the way to go was blocked, and a long and narrow short sword smashed his fairy source. Spring and autumn took back the short sword, Qin Zun fell into the ruins and turned into dust. Jian Wushuang didn't pay attention to the situation on that side. All his eyes were on Qin Tuo. After that, Qin Tuo smiled. "I really didn't expect that when I boarded Dian Immortal, I would fall into the hands of a Yenxian in the end. It's really ironic." After speaking this sentence, he fell directly, and the fairy body was broken into powder. But until then, Jian Wushuang was surprised to find that Qin Tuo didn't even have a fairy source. In other words, his source of immortality has shrunk to a certain extent, almost disappeared. It is not like the source of immortality owned by Dian. Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to study deeply, a transparent diamond crystal, after Qin Tuo's immortal body shattered, hovered in the air and slowly rotated. Jian Wushuang immediately thought of the Lingjing world and the eye wheel that had the power of bewitching. Could it be? What is the connection between them? He was puzzled and reached out to take the diamond crystal. Under the sunlight, each of the 6 sides of Lingjing reflected Jian Wushuang's face. For some reason, after seeing this Lingjing, the vague familiarity in his heart suddenly became stronger. But Jian Wushuang was almost certain that he had never seen this Lingjing. No, is it possible that this diamond crystal is a bone armor with a pattern of heavenly characters carrying Master's message? Chapter 5062. But soon, this idea was rejected by him. The form of the bone armor of the Tianzi pattern was very simple, and they all used some kind of unknown bone fragments as the carrier to depict unknown characters. Moreover, judging from the Tianzi patterned bone armor in his hand, the existence of each one was too old and barren. Jian Wushuang guessed that the existence of these heavenly character bone armor was beyond imagination, and it was very likely that it was farther away than the Wanggu era. It was precisely because of the record that the form of the bone armor with the sky character pattern related to Xian Yi's news was too single that he became more and more sure that the diamond crystal in his hand could never be the carrier of words. But what about this inexplicable sense of familiarity? Jian Wushuang frowned, rubbing the 6-sided diamond with his hands. Only then did he realize that when viewed from a certain angle, there was a vertical pupil in the center of the 6-sided diamond crystal. The vertical pupil is very vivid, as if it contains life, and when Jian Wushuang casts his eyes, he looks at him. Almost while looking at each other, he only felt that an irresistible corrosive and bewitching power quickly cannibalized his own spiritual thoughts. Jian Wushuang was startled, and directly used Yuanrong's spiritual mind to forcibly offset the bewitching power. At this time, Cui Jing's urgent voice sounded. "Big Brother Jian, are you okay?" He looked up and found that Cui Jing and Fengshan were all around him, all looking at him eagerly. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm fine, it's fine if you are all here." "Scared us? Boss, you stood there for 2 or 3 hours. We thought you were going to break through." Fengshan said grinningly, "I didn't realize something was wrong until I saw your pale face." 2 or 3 hours? Jian Wushuang's heart was shaken, and he clearly understood the importance of this. Obviously, things were done in an instant, and 2 or 3 hours had passed in the blink of an eye. There was only one possibility. When he stared at the vertical pupil in the Lingjing, he had actually been involuntarily dragged into the illusion, but because his spiritual thoughts had been melded, the vertical pupil was unable to confuse him in the next step. Jian Wushuang let out a sigh of relief, and already had a vague understanding of the true diamond pupil in his palm. This kind of thing is absolutely impossible to be mastered by Qin Tuo or even Shang Juanzong. It is too weird. For some reason, the familiar feeling in Jian Wushuang's heart became stronger. But beyond that, nothing else is known. After hesitating for a while, Jian Wushuang still put this Lingjing True Eye into his arms. "I really didn't expect that the entire sect would kill each other to the point of extermination," Chen Qing said with emotion. "That's good, we will kill the province." Looking back at last, Jian Wushuang took Chen Qing and the others around to leave the entire heaven plane that had been reduced to ruins. As a first-class superpower in the Great Division, the power of Shang Juanzong has covered nearly 15 celestial planes, and the children of the sect have also been cultivated in various celestial realms. But after this battle, the core of Shangjuanzong was reduced to ruins, and the elders of the suzerain fell. Shang Juanzong fell. Cui Jing, Fengshan, Wei Liujia, and others all returned to the 6-day realm without any problems. For Jian Wushuang, this was just a small episode after he woke up, and there was no shocking battle. There was only one Lingjing true pupil that made him uneasy. After returning to Xiaoyushan, just as Jian Wushuang was about to investigate the Lingjing true pupil, Xiaodaijin immediately came to Xiaoyushan. "No. Brother Jian, you should be prepared. Uncle Yu is coming from the heavenly court to see you." After strolling into the hall and finding that everyone was there, the little emperor straightened his clothes and said with a serious face. Chun Qiu and the others looked at each other, then looked at Jian Wushuang together. Jian Wushuang was also slightly surprised, not sure what Uncle Yu meant by coming to him. After a moment of thought, he nodded, then got up. "Brother, let's go with you." Cui Jing got up and said. Jian Wushuang shook his head. "No, he'll be back when I go, no big problem. Let's go, Uncle Yu has been waiting for a long time." Xiaodaijin raised his brows and smiled. Then, the two walked away and soon disappeared. "Big Brother Jian is going to be no problem, right?" Cui Jing stood in front of the hall and said with some worry. "If there is any problem, even if the Emperor Zhen Wuyang is here, Brother Sword will be able to do well." Chen Qing said confidently, "Let's continue to practice diligently and catch up with Brother Sword." Stepping into Degushan, Jian Wushuang has been frowning, as if thinking of some scene. He found that there seemed to be some kind of fault in his memory, and there was a memory in the middle that was blurred, and he couldn't remember what happened in the end. He only vaguely remembered that Uncle Yu was extremely powerful. At the end of the Sea of No Edge, Uncle Yu showed up and took him out of the Sea of No Edge. However, the memory after the borderless sea has become very vague, and it is impossible to know it even after careful recollection. Are some of these memories related to Uncle Yu? Jian Wushuang frowned. He naturally thought that his memory might have something to do with Uncle Yu. Perhaps seeing his concerns, Xiao Dijuan smiled and said with relief, "Don't worry too much. Uncle Yu is here this time to give you something that you left with him." "I hope so," Jian Wushuang answered. At the same time, he also had some worries in his heart. You must know that what was stored in the Boyang bottle was not only the true soul of the 3 emperors, but also his chances and trump cards. Regardless of whether any of these things were discovered by Uncle Yu or Zhen Wuyang, the consequences would be insignificant. Therefore, Jian Wushuang's heart was still a little solemn. When he set foot in the temple where the little emperor was, an old man in black robes seemed to have been waiting here for a long time, and smiled, "Little friend, long time no see." Jian Wushuang bowed his hand in return met Uncle Yu. "You don't have to look outside, let's take a seat." Uncle Yu smiled, and then directly took him into the seat. Xiao Dijuan also sat down next to Uncle Yu and said with a smile, "Uncle Yu, why are you willing to leave heaven and come to me?" Uncle Yu smiled and said, "Of course there are important things to tell, otherwise, how can I travel the heavens leisurely? If something happens, let me hear if it's good for me." He blinked, slightly excited. Uncle Yu smiled and shook his head. "This time, without your part, I'm here this time mainly to return some things for the little friend, the things he left with me." With that, Uncle Yu stretched out his hand and wiped it from his waist, and then a small green and white jade bottle was placed on the case. Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed, and his heartbeat quickened. This blue and white jade bottle is nothing but Boyang bottle. Chapter 5063. The Boyang vase can contain 3,000 worlds inside, which is called infinite. It is the companion of Emperor Yangjun. Always worn around Jian Wushuang, all the opportunities and things he had next to him after he came to Daanhuan were all hidden in the Boyang bottle. Right now, seeing the Boyang vase again, Jian Wushuang stretched out inexplicably. Xiao Daijin's expression was also unnatural for a moment, but then he still smiled and said, "Uncle Yu, from the heavenly court to the sixth heaven realm is very far away, you must be a little tired, right? I've already prepared a good wine." Uncle Yu waved his hand, then looked at Jian Wushuang softly, "Little friend, this thing belongs to you." He nodded. "That's good, now that the thing's returned to the original owner, the old man is relieved." Uncle Yu said with a smile. Jian Wushuang arched his hands in thanks and quickly retracted the Boyang bottle. He added, "Oh yes, your little bottle, I haven't opened it, it's always in its initial state." Just after investigating, Jian Wushuang knew that the Boyang bottle had indeed not been opened, and the silky sealed aura still existed on it. He breathed a sigh of relief, then solemnly bowed his hands in thanks. Uncle Yu smiled and nodded. "You don't have to be polite, little friend, this is what the old man should do, you see if there is anything missing in it." Jian Wushuang didn't even look at it, and he tied the Boyang bottle directly around his waist. Uncle Yu joked, "It's already my blessing to be able to deliver the things that the kid lost to the kid's hands." But he became a real villain. Uncle Yu laughed at the words, "Interesting, interesting. Don't be funny, you just come here to give a small bottle?" Xiaodijin shook him. "Did you bring any baby?" "You really can't hide anything from you," Uncle Yu said helplessly. "Of course I brought you a baby. Take it out quickly, take it out quickly." Xiaodijin looked extremely anxious. This time, the baby is not ordinary. Uncle Yu seemed quite mysterious. He stretched out his hand and brushed it casually, and suddenly a palm-sized jade box fell on the case. Jian Wushuang's eyes moved slightly, and he roughly guessed what was in the jade box. The little emperor couldn't wait to open the lid of the box, and the hall was full of glory, and the colorful shadows rose. The extremely strong medicinal scent has almost condensed into substance, and the smell is refreshing. Inside the jade box, there are 2 pills of pills. The pill is almost transparent, and the supreme luck inside it is like traveling with the clouds rising and spinning. At a glance, Jian Wushuang understood that these 2 pills must be Zhen Weiyang's work. Even the value of these 2 pills is higher than that of Emperor Lu Crow's Emperor Pill. Because he felt that the air luck contained in these 2 pills had already exceeded the power of evolving immortals and reached a level of another. May I ask, who can condense Daangxian's luck into a pill? Only the emperor. Opening the jade box, after seeing that the contents of the box were pills, Xiao Dijuan couldn't hide his loss in his eyes. This is nothing unusual. The only person who can despise pills of this level is probably Xiaodijin. Ordinary Yanxian, even if the aptitude is too mediocre, as long as you take one, you will definitely be promoted to Daanxian within a year. This is how terrifying these 2 pills are right now. Uncle Yu smiled and said, "Yenna, just try, and leave the rest too." Without finishing a sentence, Xiao Dijuan directly raised his head and ate beans, swallowing 2 pills in his mouth. Eat it, it seems to have no effect. Xiaodigen rubbed his stomach and raised his eyebrows to look at Uncle Yu. Indeed, when the 2 pills fell, the shocking scene that should have appeared did not appear, and even a little mysterious change did not appear. It was like a mud cow entering the sea without a trace. Who made you eat it all? Uncle Yes' eyes twitched. In those 2 pills, there is one Wushuang little friend. Xiaodigen's eyes widened. Ah? Why didn't you say it earlier? Is it possible that you want me to vomit? Uncle Yu smiled bitterly. Your temper is always so eager. He scratched his head. I am not to blame, Uncle Yu. You didn't explain it. Immediately afterwards, Uncle Yu looked at Jian Wushuang with an apologetic expression. Little friend Wushuang, this matter is the old man's fault. In the future, I will ask the emperor to give you another one. Jian Wushuang heard the words and hurriedly shook his head. Uncle Yu, absolutely no need. I have not benefited the heavenly court in any way. If I get a pill, I am ashamed of it, and I will never bear it. And the 2 pills are given to Xiaodigen. This is the most correct way. Please also Uncle Yu not to embarrass the kid. Uncle Yu said with some embarrassment, but this pill is a gift from the emperor, in order to thank you for protecting the little emperor. It's really not necessary. The pill is too precious. The kid can't bear it. Jian Wushuang shook his head extremely firmly. How he didn't understand that the importance of this pill could make Yanxian inevitably join Dianxian, it was crazy. Once he took this pill, he would have inherited the love of heaven, and this love was too heavy, he would never go back. From the present point of view, the 2 pills were eaten by Xiao Dijuan, but it was a better way to deal with it. Uncle Yu wanted to say more, but Xiao Dijuan said, Okay, Uncle Yu, don't worry about it anymore. It's a big deal to send another one in the future. The top priority at the moment is to go back to the heaven. He couldn't laugh or cry when he heard the words, Good boy, am I just so unwelcome? After a long time, Uncle Yu left. In the huge temple, only Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijuan remained. Finally gone now. Xiaodigen breathed a sigh of relief, then raised his eyebrows as he watched him. What's the matter? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Next, Xiao Dijuan's actions made his eyes wide open. He stretched out his hand and wiped it into his mouth, and the 2 pills, which contained the supreme fortune, fell into his palm again. Didn't you eat them all? Jian Wushuang asked in shock. Xiaodigen smiled triumphantly. How is it possible? You don't know the condition of my body. For me, this kind of pill will have no effect even if I take 1,000 pills. So, I pretended to eat it and hid it in my mouth. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and placed the 2 pills directly in Jian's hands. Rather than let me waste it, it's better to give it to you. Looking at the 2 pills of luck in his hands, Jian Wushuang still sent them resolutely. But Xiao Dijuan is more determined than him. If you don't accept it, then please throw away this pill. To me, these things are just useless garbage. But Jian Wushuang swallowed the words that came to his lips, leaving only a sigh. If you like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5064. In fact, what he really wanted to say was that these 2 pills, which were supreme for the common immortality, had little effect on him. Because Jian Wushuang is basically certain now, his upper limit is Yanxian. As for Dian Immortal, and even the Emperor's position, almost all have no chance with him. Therefore, he couldn't bear the 2 supreme pills that contained the luck of Dian Immortal. But he couldn't say all these things, he could only smile bitterly while holding these 2 pills. I think I will see a Dian Immortal soon. Xiaodigen said with a smile. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. I think it's not that easy. Xiaodigen is not commenting on this. After leaving Degushan and Jian Wushuang returned to Xiagushan, Cui Jing and others all surrounded him. Big brother Jian, how about it? Is it from heaven? Did you give me some amazing baby? Faced with these questions, Jian Wushuang patiently answered them one by one. And of course the two pills were also said. No, there is such a pill? Cui Jing was completely shocked. Not only Cui Jing, but Chen Qing and others were also shocked. The pill that can make Yanxian inevitably promote to Dianxian actually has it. Chen Qing murmured in shock. Good guy, if this is placed in the eternal unparalleled, I am afraid the entire force of the big division will fight for it. No, this matter cannot be spread, only you can know it. Jian Wushuang said seriously. Upon his reminder, Chen Qing and others realized the seriousness of it. If the news of this kind of Dan Maru spreads out, I am afraid that countless universes will be shaken by it, and Wangu Wushuang is just an auction house and cannot resist too many variables. Therefore, this matter must not be spread. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wushuang waved his hand and placed the two pills on the case. These are the two pills. I keep them useless. Any one of you needs to pick them up. Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, Cui Jing, Feng Shan and Wei Liujia all looked at each other, and then shook their heads tacitly at the same time. Brother Sword, we don't use this pill. It's not a waste if you use it. Chen Qing said with a smile. Chun Qiu also nodded. Brother Jian, Brother Chen is right. In the past 2,000 years, the few of us only took D-pin pills, no less than a few hundred pills. The medicinal effects are accumulated in the body, enough to support our breakthrough. Yes, you should take this pill, the boss. I'm afraid I can't stand the medicine. Cui Jing waved his hand and said, Fengshan Dezhang is gearing up. I never take medicine in Fengshan, and I am most concerned about the success of everything. Ibid, Wei Liujia said with a smile. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly, how he didn't know what they were thinking. Brother Sword, try to break through again, maybe this is an opportunity, Chen Qing said sincerely. I look forward to where you will grow when you become Dian Immortal. Chun Qiu said with a smile, yes, Brother Jian, you will grow up soon, but Wugu Wushuang still needs you to cover it. Jian Wushuang shook his head simply, at least for a short time, I want to try to break through the realm of Dian Immortal again. I have more important things to do. These two pills are placed in the hall, and whoever has the first opportunity to make a breakthrough at that time must take one. Remember, only if you continue to be strong can you gain a foothold in the boundless universe. At this moment, Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, Cui Jing, Feng Shan, and Wei Liujia all nodded solemnly. It was precisely because they were not strong enough that Qin Tuo led him by the nose and almost suffered irreparable damage. Immediately afterwards, Cui Jing Dao, boss, there are still important things to do, what are you talking about? You won't be leaving again, right? Jian Wushuang shook his head and smiled, don't leave now, take a good rest and feel for a while before talking. Chen Qing, Chun Qiu and others looked at each other, and then showed a smirk. If that's the case, let's drink stubbornly for 10 days and 10 nights. It's not so good, my injury seems to have not fully recovered. The long breeze passed by, and the temple stood forever. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was lying on his back on the top of the eaves of the temple, holding a domino in his left hand, staring in a dream. Nearly 20,000 years have passed since the first Tianzi-patterned bone armor was obtained. And in these nearly 20,000 years, so many things have happened, so that he didn't even have time to find and unlock the bone armor of the sky. But now, everything has come to an end for the time being, except that Di Qing is still missing. Jian Wushuang has time to find and unlock the secret of the heavenly character bone armor. Now in his hands, he holds 2 bone armors with the sky pattern related to Master Xuani, and there is also a known bone armor in the hands of Yinling Empress. A total of 3 bone armors were not enough to reveal too much useful information. Jian Wushuang guessed that these heavenly character patterned bone armors would never be less than 10. But now that he wants to gather these heavenly characters and bones, it is no different from fantasy. Therefore, Jian Wushuang planned to start with the ciphertext on the known bones and armors in his hands. The ciphertext on this bone armor is too old and barren, can't comprehend it by himself. Therefore, Jian Wushuang immediately thought of that brief conversation with Xiaodigen. It can be said that there are very few difficult and obscure ciphertexts in the entire Big Division domain, not to mention this kind of text that surpasses the ancient Baron. But there are always exceptions to everything. The first-class master craftsman in Desiu, Su Tuo, who lives in the Sansuan mountain, loves casting the most precious treasures, and studies difficult and obscure cipher texts. In this regard, Jian Wushuang felt that he could find the craftsman Su Tuo to try. He had already begun to plan to cultivate for a period of time before leaving for Sansuan mountain. Just as Jian Wushuang was thinking about it, Cui Jing's words pulled him into reality. "Hey, brother Jian, when did you have this bracelet on your wrist? Why haven't I seen it before?" Hearing this, he subconsciously looked at his wrist, only to find that he didn't know when he was wearing a bracelet between his left wrist. "Why don't I remember having this bracelet before?" Jian Wushuang was also surprised. The bracelet on his wrist showed a primitive meaning, depicting the water pattern of the mountains, magnificent and majestic. After a moment of contemplation, he began to prepare to remove the bracelet. But soon he discovered that this bracelet is not an extraordinary thing, and it contains breathtaking imprisoning power. "Is it young Master Yen, or uncle you brought it to me?" Jian Wushuang frowned and thought, but soon these ideas were rejected by him. Because there is no fairy tale who can put a bracelet on his wrist without his knowledge. But this kind of thing happened. If it weren't for Cui Jing's reminder, Jian Wushuang didn't even notice the change. Like, "Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed." Chapter 5065. He had an inexplicable intuition that the bracelet seemed to be holding something. But what exactly was imprisoned, he didn't know at all. "No, boss, you don't know who gave you this bracelet?" Cui Jing was surprised, and then lowered his voice. "You said, would it be Xiaodigen?" Jian Wushuang did not speak, but he already had a general judgment in his heart. Leaving from the borderless sea, Uncle Yu took him out, and for a while, his memory was fragmented, and it was almost impossible to remember what happened. And this simple bracelet was most likely worn on his body during the period of time he was in a coma. As for who did this, Jian Wushuang has already made a rough judgment. But why do they want to put such a thing on me? He frowned, and then, as if he realized something, sat up and started to sit up on the spot. The surging power, like a mountain like a sea, circulates endlessly in the meridian. Immortal style, strength, and kendo are all missing, and they have even reached a state of astonishment, unlike the previous ones. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. This bracelet didn't confine anything he owned. It is precisely because of this that he feels weird. Since there is nothing imprisoned, what is the meaning of this bracelet? After contemplating for a while, Jian Wushuang planned to forget this beforehand, and only after seeing the little emperor he asked him to understand. It has been rare for them to get together for nearly 20,000 years. At this moment, they all sit or lie on the eaves of the temple, resting leisurely. It is rare for Jian Wushuang to stop busy and enjoy a moment of peace. Then, taking advantage of Chuanqiu and the others, he set his plan to leave. Hearing this, Cui Jing got up and said eagerly, "Boss, take me this time, take me with him." "Go, it's my time this time." Feng Shan twisted his huge body and came over. "Fair competition, fair competition." Chen Qing was unwilling to lag behind. Seeing this noisy scene, Jian Wushuang couldn't laugh or cry, and then he said sternly, "It's all quiet. I'm going this time. I don't know when I can come back, so I'm afraid you can't walk with me. What you have to do now is to improve your own strength as much as possible. Only in this way can you truly gain a foothold in Dianhuan." At this moment, Chen Qing and others all stood up solemnly and began to ponder. Without exception, they pulled their thoughts into the far future and the broader and unpredictable Dianhuan. Dianhuan is not only an endless blue universe with the ultimate mystery to Jian Wushuang, but also to Chen Qing and others. None of them have taken a big step forward. Desiu is too magnificent, countless Yenxian and even Dianxian never walked out. However, such a big division is just a chestnut in the great development world. Even the spring and autumn period, the son of the former Emperor Wang Gu, couldn't imagine the vastness of Dianhuan. Therefore, they all meditated on Jian Wushuang's words, and at the same time they began to discover that outside of the Daisai domain, the real Dagwan was. At this moment, Chunky's gaze became firmer and firmer, and then he said, "Brother Jian, as long as he arrives at Dian Immortal, he can continue to follow you and go to the wider universe outside the Daisai area?" As soon as this remark came out, the eyes of Qin Qing, Cui Jing and others also became enthusiastic. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. "Of course it is possible to go outside the wider and unpredictable universe, but what you have to do now is to raise your realm to a higher level and reach Dian Immortal. Dian Immortal, except for the Emperor, is the real Supreme Being, and he can create heaven in his breath. It is an indescribable existence. For Yenxian, boarding Dianxian is an unattainable imagination. You know, the entire vast and boundless Desiyu, after experiencing the War of Emperors in that ancient age, Dian Immortal is already scarce or even less than the number of hands. There are even rumors that the upward path has been blocked and cannot be broken. But after seeing Qin Tu'a, son of the Shangjuan clan, ascended the place of Dian Immortal, they knew that the upward path was not blocked, but it was getting more difficult. Now that Jian Wushuang wants them to ascend to Dian Immortal as soon as possible, isn't it just to prove this from the side? Only by increasing diligence and reaching that kind of height can it be regarded as the true peak. At this moment, with the exception of Jian Wushuang, Qin Qing, Chun Qiu, Cui Jing, Feng Shan, and Wei Liujia were all nodding their heads. They all had determined their goals in their hearts and set out towards Dian Immortal. Jian Wushuang's words not only motivated them, but also motivated himself to move toward a higher place. As we continue to move forward, new myths have emerged from those long-standing memories. Master Xian Yi, Lao Zun, and the domination of the Void Universe, almost overwhelming the Void God's Emperor-devouring and devouring organization. What are their origins, and whether they have left footprints in this ultimate development? These, like layers of mist, enveloped Jian Wushuang's heart. What he has to do now is to remove this layer of fog and let all the truth emerge. So he didn't dare to slacken for a moment. Facing the only clue, the heavenly lettering bone armor, he must grasp it. After drinking at the eaves of the temple for dozens of days, Jian Wushuang left alone without letting any Yenxian follow him, as if he had never appeared before. And when he left, he went to find Xiao Dijuan again, and finally left after knowing the approximate location of the Master Su Tao's Sansuan Mountain. He couldn't wait any longer for the news about the bone armor of the heavenly character pattern, so he set out again. Facing the vast unknown universe, Jian Wushuang never backed away. Although the Daisai domain is infinite and infinite, almost all of them are divided into 7 pieces, corresponding to the 7 emperors under the seat of Emperor Zhenwiang. The location of Sansuan Mountain is quite mysterious and erratic. San Siyuan Mountain does not belong to any side of the Big Division domain. It is illusory and cannot be found. I wanted to find the craftsman Su Tua's Yenxian. It was already innumerable, but in the end they could only return sadly. There are rumors that San Siyuan Mountain is the most proud treasure of the craftsman Su Tua, built with supreme power. Even if it is Dian Immortal, it cannot be explored, let alone search for it. Xiao Dijuan can only tell the approximate location, which is also not very clear. And the approximate location of Sansuan Mountain, but it is precisely in a headache place Dahishan. Demission is the domain of the second emperor's son-in-law, and is also controlled by the son-in-law who has the deepest grievance with Jian Wushuang. Although San Siyuan Mountain does not belong to the Great Heaven, it is adjacent to the Great Heaven and I don't know where it is. But even so, Jian Wushuang still embarked on the journey, towards the vast nothingness. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5066. Because of his first experience, he is no longer lost in the void. The void is vast, but the immortal rushing on the road is extremely sparse. Occasionally, the immortal appears, but it is just a suspicious glance at Jian Wushuang and then disappears into the void. Relying on his own speed, it would take him not a short time to reach the great sky, and if he relied on the immortal formation left by the Wangu era, it would greatly shorten the time. But I don't know if the impression of the immortal formation is not good. Jian Wushuang stubbornly did not choose the immortal formation, but moved forward alone. The universe is horizontal and horizontal, all creeping under him. There are countless creatures and monks who are unwilling to live in each heaven, and these heavens are nothing but a shudder in the vast ocean. The sea shuddered I don't know where. These feelings stayed in Jian Wushuang's spirit for a while, and then they were erased, and he continued to move forward in silence. Those who can move across countless celestial domains are all immortals. And not all fairy cultivators are good people. They often have vigorous cultivation bases, but are promoted to Dian celestial cultivators who are hopeless, robbing and killing them in the void. It was the same as those Yenxian and top repairers that Jian Wushuang encountered during the Great Voyage. Although Jian Wushuang is still Yenxian, his level of strength has long been terrifying to the extreme. Even the son of Shangzhenzong, Qin Tua, who was promoted to the position of Dianxian, was killed by him. Therefore, he doesn't care much about the danger hidden in the void. Today, even if he is facing the 9th-rank Dian Immortal, he is confident that he can retreat completely. But the less you care, the more the crisis is found. Hey, visitors here, hand over everything on your body, I will let you go. The slightly rough voice resounded, and then a dozen figures suddenly appeared in the void, blocking all of Jian Wushuang's path. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly and stopped. In the vast void, the solitary Yenxian is most vulnerable to robbery. And among these 18 body shapes, there are 7 evangelists, and the rest of them are all deep cultivation bases. These supreme powerhouses who had already stood at the top, but now doing this kind of activity, could not help but make Jian Wushuang disgusted. The head of the 18 figures, a rough-faced man, took the lead, with his halberd pointed at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were extremely arrogant, as if he was looking at what was in his bag. In his opinion, there is no other special place for the young man Yenxian in front of him, except for his temperament. Jian Wushuang, who looked calm and silent, suddenly smiled. Of course there is, you take it from yourselves and I will give it to you. Hearing this, the rough-faced man froze for a moment, then was overjoyed and rushed forward. But then a thin Yenxian suddenly grabbed him and shook his head slightly. Don't be reckless. Lao San, are you stupid, just a lone Yenxian as for this? The thick-faced man threw off the skinny Yenxian's palm and walked towards Jian Wushuang with excitement. The other Yenxian also moved closer at the same time. Don't play tricks, honestly hand over all the treasures, and I will let you go otherwise. The rough-faced man suddenly released his vigorous power, and the general trend was unstoppable. Facing such a group of immortals and Ding Xiu, Jian Wushuang's disgust was even worse, but he didn't show it. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wu turned his palms together, and a dark blue pill appeared in his palm. Suddenly, thousands of miles away, they were all filled with a strange fragrance of medicine. The colorful shadow, centered on Jian Wushuang, is extremely rich. When this pill was born, all the immortal and top repairers had their eyes rounded instantly. Incredible. This pill was beyond their imagination. Even if they hadn't seen it before, all of the pill exuded air. Fortune told them that it was a great fortune. All Yenxian became enthusiastic, almost all of them involuntarily rushed to that pill. But the next moment, the sudden change occurred. A wisp of sword intent that was so soft that it was almost impossible to see, floated up like a feather, spinning and dancing. Time seemed to stagnate for a moment. Before all the crazy Yenxian and the enthusiasm in Dingxia's eyes had dissipated, he only felt a chill in his neck and heart, and then he lost his breath. That soft sword intent killed 6 immortals and 11 repairers within one breath. If you look carefully, you can see that their source of immortality has been broken and cannot be reshaped. The heads with fanaticism in their eyes fell into the void, and then they were torn to pieces by the void wind. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly as he converged to Huang. He didn't care about these dead Yenxian corpses, but looked into the distance. There, a skinny figure had escaped hundreds of millions of miles away. As early as when Jian Wushuang took out the pills, the skinny Yenxian escaped without hesitation and had already escaped a long distance. It's really good stuff to be a scout, Jian Wushuang murmured. Even though he said that, he didn't intend to let go of this small change. And the location where the skinny Yan Xian escaped was also the direction of the sky. Jian Wushuang naturally chased it up. At this moment, wisps of cold sweat flowed from the sideburns of the thin Yan Xian, and he almost tried his best to escape. He didn't even dare to turn his head, almost lost his soul. If it weren't for caution, I'm afraid he would be dead now. Now with 18 figures, he was the only one who escaped from birth, and couldn't help but secretly rejoice. But fortunately, it didn't last long. The skinny Yan Xian looked back subconsciously, and by this look, he almost lost his soul. The face was calm, and while waving his hands, he killed 6 Yanxian and 11 young Xianxian who had been in the top repair. At this moment, he rushed towards him. Desperate spread, and the skinny Yanxian felt cold in his hands and feet, and trembled all over. An unspeakable murderous intent quietly swept across. But this Sin Lung killing intent was not released by Jian Wushuang. Sin cold, domineering. This killing intent instantly filled millions of miles. Jian Wushuang also stopped at the right time and raised his eyebrows slightly. This is killing intent, but also sword intent. Being able to cover such a wide distance in an instant is already extraordinary. Do you have to rush to kill? Can't you be softer? It was like the voice of 9 days falling floating, with a bit of questioning cold, coming towards Jian Wushuang. In the form of voice, countless ice crystal sword intent fell, and the potential could disappear. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. He stretched out his hand, and the endless breeze swept up into the sky. When the two collided, countless ice crystal sword intent was like a mud cow entering the sea, and they disappeared in an instant. But the sweeping breeze cleared all the chaos of the void, making the voice in the dark nowhere to hide. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5067. The chaotic void wind dissipated, revealing a rather thin figure. He wore a long sword at his waist, dressed in a black uniform. His face was extremely clear, and his eyes were like cold swords, bursting with cold light. In the first confrontation, the thin body of the long sword at the waist fell into a low position, which made him very unhappy and somewhat unbelievable. But he quickly concealed his emotions and looked at the skinny fairy who was kneeling beside him, shaking like chaff. Then he said, "Hey, why is he killing you?" The skinny Yanxian trembled, almost paralyzed in the air, and said in a trembling voice, "No, I don't know, but he is bloodthirsty and easy to kill. All of my companions have died in his hands. If I were not running fast, I'm afraid it has already been poisoned." The bloodthirsty for no reason is easy to kill? The thin figure obviously didn't believe his one-sided words, turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang and said loudly, "Is what he said is true?" So what? Jian Wushuang said quietly. "Good fellow, unexpectedly let this seat run into an unruly guy," said the thin-body Shinshin. "In that case, then you pay the price you deserve." With the fall of this sentence, an unprecedented sword intent broke out, rising vertically and horizontally, causing the void to vibrate. Under this sword intent, the skinny Yanxian, who was shaking like chaff, was directly stunned. Facing this sword intent, Jian Wushuang's gaze also condensed. He felt a kind of power fluctuation that did not belong to Yanxian. This unremarkable fellow is actually a Dayan immortal. You know, the entire DCU, after experiencing the War of Emperors, Dayan Xian almost disappeared. However, Jian Wushuang encountered Dayan immortal one after another, and almost all of them were opposites, which made him very helpless. A Dayan immortal is nothing to Jian Wushuang, who has experienced the terrifying tempering of the Sea of No Edge, but a Dayan immortal who has a deep understanding of Kendo is enough to give him a headache. Moreover, only from the sword intent he burst out, Jian Wushuang did not dare to underestimate it. The thin figure drew up the sword, drew the sword's mighty glory, and directly covered it down. Jian Wushuang didn't want to fight too much, so he directly released Wushuang Kendo. Xinghe Lake Sea Sword Intent, the first style. The unremarkable straight cut, as the beginning of the whole spectrum of Wushuang Kendo, is a rare sword intent focused on explosion. A sword smashed into the void, and at the same time thousands of on pillars erupted and swallowed everything. The lean figure was amazed, and he rushed towards Jian Wushuang, completely disregarding the sword intent of his body being cut off. Seeing this weird scene, Jian Wushuang browsed slightly. He obviously didn't expect the guy to rush towards him like a bull. This undoubtedly disrupted his thoughts, but Jian Wushuang did not back down, instantly adjusted his state, and took the lead. Wushuang Kendo Zingaheijianyani, the second style. River. The towering Tianhe, the broken void flowing from every crack, and then gathered and roared. Under this sword, even Dianxian would feel his own insignificance. What a powerful sword! The thin body unabashedly praised and said, "In that case, I also want you to see the strongest sword." A more chilling breath suddenly swept through, centering on the thin figure. The void was directly torn apart. Then countless sword intent gathered behind him into a big day. The bright sun, which contains 9 red golden sun rays, circulates behind him like a golden wheel. Facing the majestic river-shaped sword intent, his thin figure suddenly raised his sword. What Jian Feng pointed to was unstoppable. At this moment, the golden wheel behind him burst out with the most dazzling golden light, among which 9 Qijin Rihui burst out, turning into 9 true swords, moving forward. What Jian Feng pointed to, even the Tianhe composed of countless pure sword intents, began to shatter. The 9-handed true sword turns into a hot sun, slashing all kendos. Jian Wushuang condensed his eyes. His heart was shocked. This is the first time that apart from Zhijiangxian's kendo, there are other kendos that can compete with Wushuang Kendo. As the river-shaped sword intent shattered and dissipated, the 9 true swords that looked like the blazing sun also turned into nothingness. Jian Wushuang didn't care about it, but stared at that dying immortal. The thin figure looked extremely excited, happy. "I didn't expect that a Yanxian would actually rely on kendo to suppress my head." Jian Wushuang looked at him without speaking. "Who did your kendo come from? Or did you comprehend it yourself?" The thin figure continued to excitement, apparently forgetting the original intention. "It's not that I am arrogant. Those who can fight against my sword never exceed the index. I didn't expect that you can not only fight against me, but also crush me. It really is not easy." Jian Wushuang looked at him. "Is that enough?" The thin figure was startled, but instead of getting angry, he scratched his head and said, "Misunderstanding. It should have been a misunderstanding just now." "Since it's a misunderstanding, don't stand in my way," he said quietly. "Also, the guy you are protecting is not a good thing. Takes the fun of killing Shan Yanxian. I happened to run into me, so I just wiped it out." The thin figure was startled again, even though his face turned cold. "I thought this guy was not a good thing. It really is." When the voice fell, he raised his hand and directly picked up the thin Yanxian who had passed out, and then unscrewed his head without any hesitation. Taking another look at the thin figure, Jian Wushuang turned and left. There is still a long journey before devotion, and he doesn't need to waste any time. After passing through the thousands of heavens alone, Jian Wushuang stopped again, and then looked back. I saw the thin figure with the skinny Xianxian head in one hand, and then followed. "What are you doing with me?" Jian Wushuang frowned, already a little unhappy. The thin figure smiled, and some said embarrassedly, "I had a misunderstanding before. I would like to accompany you." "There is no misunderstanding. If what he said is true, what I said is false." He said, "It's all one-sided words. How to tell?" "Sword. Sword intent," the thin figure said suddenly and firmly. "Your sword intent will not lie to me. You can use such a pure sword intent to evolve the immortal. If there is impurities in your mind, you will never realize this kind of sword." "Okay, the matter has been exposed. I will continue on my way. You don't have to follow me anymore." Jian Wushuang left this sentence before turning around and leaving. He threw the head in his hands into the void. His thin figure looked at the leaving back, and after weighing it repeatedly, he still caught up. "This little friend, can you ask where you are going? How about we go together?" No way. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5068. The Vast Void, the Endless Universe. Even if the fairy yen shuttles through the void, it is dangerous. Traveling together is a better way to deal with danger. Little friend, I have to admit that your kendo is extremely good, but judging from your current realm, you still have to be more stable. The thin figure is quite ridiculous. Relying on his being Dian immortal, he has repeatedly approached Jian Wushuang. Finally, Jian Wushuang was a little bit intolerable. Don't you think, to me now, the biggest threat is you? You think you are wrong, little friend. It's absolutely impossible for this seat to be that kind of immortal. The thin body said righteously. Jian Wushuang didn't want to spend any more words anymore. He could feel that this guy was just a pure talk. He didn't know how many years he hadn't spoken before he kept chattering. It wasn't until Jian Wushuang had reduced some of his hostility that he shut up with satisfaction. But soon, he sighed again, it's a blessing to be accompanied by a like-minded little friend. I don't know how long I haven't spoken. Have you been like this all the time? Jian Wushuang suddenly said, doing things in the void of the big universe? Not at all, it's mainly because I like to make injustices. The thin body twitched the corners of his mouth. When Jian Wushuang heard the words, he couldn't help shaking his head and stop talking. What happened just now, it's really... I'm wrong, little friend. You must not mind, in fact, I am still very easy to get along with. He continued, next, in order to redeem my mistake, I decided to protect my little friend throughout the process. No need. Jian Wushuang said quietly. The lean figure didn't know what to do with this sluggish guy. But soon he became smug again, and fell several feet behind Jian Wushuang, following him slowly. And Jian Wushuang didn't bother to care about this, and continued to swoop into the depths of the void. The void is vast, and there is still a long way to go from the great sky. As he continued to advance in the void, he gradually let go of his vigilance and let his thin figure follow closely. Little friend, look at these countless heavenly planes. Do you have any thoughts? The thin figure waved his arms, pointed at countless planes like stars and said, showing a faint smile. Jian Wushuang glanced at him, but did not speak. And the thin figure didn't care about this and continued to think about it. From the perspective of this seat, everything is poor, but the 4 characters are enough to summarize. These 4 words are, into the dust to be born. As soon as he said this, Jian Wushuang's figure was slightly startled, and then he recovered his calm look. Indeed, how can he be a mediocre person who can compete with his own swordsmanship under the galaxy sword intent? The skinny figure can see all his changes, and he can't help but smile. The little friend, how about I take you to the dust? This time, Jian Wushuang did not refuse, yes. Then let's get into the dust this time. The thin figure laughed and then went ahead. And Jian Wushuang, who was about to go to the great sky, was also successfully led astray. The so-called immersion in the dust means to enter the mortal world and experience the most subtle breath. As far as Yu Yenxian is concerned, the mortal world is filthy, and its own powerful force is extremely easy to escape. Therefore, almost no evangelization will take a step into the world. But the thin figure is an exception. He doesn't care about his own luck and energy escape and enters the world. In the heavenly plane where there is no supreme truth, even sparse power to generate monks, 2 figures in plain gowns walked forward slowly. Of these 2 figures, one is Jian Wushuang, and the other is thin. The bazaar is extremely prosperous, and is made up of mortals who cannot control and perceive power. Jian Wushuang and his slender figure walked in the market, and although they had reduced their strength, the sense of being out of the dust still attracted a lot of attention. In the bustling crowd, the thin figure seemed quite comfortable. I didn't know where to find 2 cucumbers and handed them to Jian Wushuang. After being turned down, he didn't care and started chewing. After I reached the height I wanted to reach, I stopped and went into the earthly world one after another, to feel the slightest meaning of entering the dust. All the immortals have abandoned the world like a shoe, but I have a different feeling. The lifespans of these mortals are extremely short, at most 100 years is a reincarnation. I once sat on a mortal mountain and watched them reincarnate for thousands of generations. The loneliness of life and death made me feel a little touched. Speak out, you may not believe it, I can ascend to die an immortal, it has a lot to do with the world. Throwing Guardi on the ground casually, his thin figure looked at Jian Wushuang, but I always feel that I'm still a bit short of fire. He shrugged, perhaps when I really understand it, that's when my avenue appears. Quietly listening to the heart of a dying immortal, Jian Wushuang said, that day may never appear, may only be in a thought. I hope that day will never come. The thin body smiled. By the way, I have known each other for so long, and I haven't asked your name yet. Jian Wushuang. I am Nan Xian. After exchanging names, neither of them spoke, and moved forward leisurely. The bazaar is prosperous, without a word. Although there are not many pedestrians, their eyes are warm and sincere at both of them. But soon, the pedestrians in the market began to rush forward in a hurry, as if to join in some excitement. Hurry up and go. Have you heard that an illusionist came from Fanbang? It is rumored that the illusion is so complete that you can change anything you want. Let's go and take a look. Accompanied by the noisy sound, nearly half of the pedestrians gathered forward. Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian were also carried forward by the crowd. In the end, the pedestrians gathered in the depths of the downtown area and finally stopped in front of a stall full of masks. In the center of this stall, a sloppy old man with white hair wearing a Taoist robe swayed from left to right with joy. As his figure shook, the bells tied around his waist made a crisp sound. Welcome to the spectators, the old way has been waiting for you for a long time. He said with a smile, then reached out and took off a white monkey mask on the shelf, and then fell on the table. In an instant, a cloud of smoke came out of the white monkey mask, and then a white monkey with long arms and a white body sprang out from it. The crowd was in an uproar, and they were all surprised by this scene. It is an unthinkable thing to turn a dead thing into a living thing, but it actually happened right now. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5069. Even Nan Xian, who is dying immortal, blinked at this moment, a little surprised. He exclaimed in a low voice, "No way, what kind of illusion is this? It can be so confused?" Everyone sighed. Only Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with surprise, and he felt a very familiar aura in this veteran body. The familiar breath was extremely weak, but he was immediately aware of it. Jian Wushuang was a little confused. This mortal plane was just a low-level plane in the countless universes of the Great Division. How could there be an existence that made him feel familiar? What's more, this sloppy old way does not have the slightest fluctuation in strength, and it can basically exclude the ranks of monks. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang continued to wait and see. Accompanied by the crowd's uproar, the long-armed white monkey jumped off the table, and then began to cling to it, looking extremely naive. At this time, the sloppy old Dao dressed in Taoist clothes beckoned, "Hurry up, the monkey, come back and bring watermelons to quench your thirst." "Gigi." The white monkey replied, turned back and jumped onto the shoulders of the sloppy old man, then stretched his paw and touched it in the old man's arms. Soon, a melon seed was held out by the white monkey. It jumped to the ground in a pose, and quickly removed a small hole in the ground and placed the seeds in it. There is a law in the growth of everything, but this law is not unbreakable. Today I will break this law in front of all the spectators. After finishing the sloppy old saying, he stretched out his hand and waved at the place where the seeds were buried. Suddenly, a mysterious scene appeared. Seeing the soil loose, a touch of emerald green vines broke through the ground and slowly protruded. This is a melon vine, but in just a few breaths, it has grown up from a seedling, crawling on the ground and full of greenery. Then, the sloppy Taoist spit out another breath, and the melon among the melon vines grew in the wind, and soon a green watermelon was born. Seeing this scene, the atmosphere in the crowd rose even more, and they were all overwhelmed by this miraculous scene. In less than 10 breaths of time, The change from a melon seed to a huge melon is indeed amazing. This old way is a bit interesting, even I don't even know it. The thin figure named Nanxian said thoughtfully, touching his chin with his hand. As for Jian Wushuang, his suspicion gradually calmed down. The sloppy old-fashioned laughed. Since the fruits are ripe, we must pick them. As he said, he bent down and picked off the only large melon among the vines. Look at the officials. This melon is not a common melon, but a golden melon that hides mystery. The sloppy old Wei said, using his hand as a knife, he cut through the emerald green melon. At this moment, everyone was looking forward to it and held their breath. Immediately afterwards, a ray of golden light emerged from the gap between the melons. Then, thousands of rays of golden light burst out together. Don't look directly at the light. Everyone covered their eyes subconsciously. When the light dissipated, one after another exclaimed, "I saw the huge melon that was cut in half, which should have been the inside of the melon, but was stuffed with countless golden melon seeds." The sloppy old man was very satisfied, and reached out his hand to take out a gold melon seed from the huge melon and raised it into the air. This is a gift from God to the old way and everyone. Every golden melon seed will be in the hands of the spectators. Don't worry. As soon as these words came out, the crowd boiled completely, and getting a golden melon seed for no reason was enough to drive everyone crazy. Looking at the already agitated crowd, the sloppy old Dao waved his hand hurriedly. "Wait, everyone onlookers, because the gold seeds are limited, the old Dao has to set a threshold. The threshold is that a golden melon seed needs 1 money to buy." The crowd was quiet, and soon became restless again. For a mere $1, only 3 or 5 steamed buns could be bought, and it was a great deal to be able to exchange for a golden melon seed. "I'm coming, I'll buy 10 pills. A strong man held $10 tightly and exclaimed with excitement. Lao Dao finishes his sentence first. "For this melon seed, 1 person is limited to 1, said the sloppy old Dao. "Moreover, you must breathe a sigh at the coin in your hand before you can use this coin to exchange for a golden melon seed." He was still the strong man before, and he breathed a sigh of relief at the coin in his hand and handed it to him. The sloppy old man smiled openly, and after taking the coin he gave out a golden melon seed. This scene deeply irritated everyone. Next, the whole scene was completely messed up, and everyone scrambled to change gold melon seeds. Only Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian stood calmly in place. "What do you think? Is this old way of cultivating immortals here from the rest of the universe?" Nan Xian looked at him and asked. Jian Wushuang's deep gaze seemed to see through the crowd, seeing the most central scene. "I'm afraid it's almost impossible to leave." The next moment he set off directly, and an unimaginable strange wave burst out of him, like a wave easily pushing the crowd away. Yu reading www.akanshu.com. Nanxian also knew that something was strange and hurried to follow up. When he entered the center of the crowd, in front of the stall full of masks, Nanxian's brows were already wrinkled. At this moment, where there is still that sloppy and old-fashioned figure, there is only a white monkey with a long arm, looking at them with a smile. Jian Wu's eyes were sinking like water, and he directly stretched out his hand to draw towards the white monkey. The white monkey screamed horribly and turned into a mask again and fell to the ground. "Let the old guy run away?" Nan Xian was angry from his heart. As a real Dayan immortal, he not only got illusion, but also let the caster escape. This is undoubtedly a shame. How could it be him? Shouldn't he be in the endless sea? How could he run out? Jian Wushuang frowned, without any clue at all. Nan Xian said in a cold voice, "I'm digging 3 feet in the ground today, and we must get him out." Then, their eyes looked far away. At the same time, in the bazaar, an old Dao wearing a tattered Dao robes ran away in a panic. Because he walked too fast, it seemed quite funny. "No, it's impossible, I must have read it wrong. How could it be him? How could I meet him in a place where there is no flow of power?" In the constant escape, the old Dao thought to himself, he seemed to think of something terrible, and his eyes kept flashing panic. The battle was so terrible that he, who had escaped by chance, was extremely frightened even when he recalled that scene. As long as I absorb some more luck, my injury will get better, and then I will flee wherever I want, and no one will find me. As the sloppy old man thought, his footsteps became quicker. Like, Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5070. But soon, everything changed. The original downtown buildings, as well as the ground under your feet, began to tremble. In an instant, the world revolved. The sloppy old Wei only felt a flower in front of him, and then he was kicked to the ground with a heavy foot. "Run, I see where else you can go." Nan Xian shouted angrily, and firmly suppressed the sloppy old Wei with his feet. "Okay, good guy for your life, I didn't do anything that violates heaven and harmony, so please be careful." The sloppy old man lying on the ground said with difficulty. At this moment, Jian Wushuang walked slowly in front of him, and then slowly squatted down. The sloppy old man who originally planned to continue begging for mercy, after seeing the face of the visitor, his body trembled suddenly, his eyes closed, and he fainted unexpectedly. "Scared to death?" Nan Xian was shocked. Jian Wushuang said coldly, "If you pretend to be dead again, you are really dead." The voice fell, and the sloppy old Wei woke up. He didn't dare to look at him. He slammed his head on the ground frantically. "I beg my lord for my life, my lord's forgiveness." He shouted coldly, "Shut up, I don't want to pursue the previous matter." The sloppy old Dao fell silent immediately, lying on the ground without daring to move. Now, Jian Wushuang has recognized that this old Wei is the old Daojiang parade that deceived his Hunyuan Weheguo by using illusions that were enough to cover the sky. But he didn't intend to pursue it. He just frowned and said, "How did you escape from the borderless sea? Tell me, is there any crack in the borderless sea?" When the sloppy old Daojiang parade heard the words, his figure trembled again, and then his face bitterly said, "Back to your lord, there are no cracks in the endless sea. The reason why I can escape is because I abandoned all my luck and took advantage of the sky. It hasn't been completely shut down to escape." Regarding what he said, Jian Wushuang didn't believe it at all, and directly reached out to explore his luck. Under this investigation, it was found that the status quo of Jiang Parade was indeed exactly the same as what was said, so I gave up. "Let's go." Jian Wushuang got up, his expression slightly tired. Nan Xian was taken aback and then said, "Then this guy, just let him run away like this?" He didn't look back. "Let him go, it doesn't make any sense to kill." Although Nan Xian was a little angry, he didn't hurt the killer in the end. After kicking Jiang Parade, he left. Jiang Gongju slowly got up, sat on the ground for a long time, and after looking at Jian Wushuang's forehead, he disappeared without a trace. This trip into the dust was extremely unsatisfactory and encountered one of the biggest variables that disrupted everything. Jian Wushuang was no longer in the mood to continue to travel around the world, and after he was born in a hurry, he went straight to the direction of the sky. "Little friend, you seem to know that old Wei before?" In the void, Nan Xian asked. "Yes, I have met once and stole something from me," Jian Wushuang said without concealment. He said angrily, "I knew that old guy was not a good thing, it really is." But Jian Wushuang didn't touch this. Seeing Jiang Parade again, he didn't give birth to murder in his heart. What's more, there is an inexplicable feeling for the imprisoned Dayan immortals in the Sea of No Edge. It was precisely because of this inexplicable feeling that let him let go of Jiang Parade. "Little friend, what is your final destination?" "It's overwhelming." After the first battle among the 9th turn Dayan immortals, the entire Great Heaven domain was almost destroyed to nearly 70%. Even if nearly 20,000 years have passed, it has not yet fully recovered. The fragments of the broken heaven plane are still visible, and there is a kind of lonely desolation everywhere. "I remember being here earlier. How did it become like this now?" Nan Xian was quite surprised. In his memory, the Great Heaven Horizon was the top-tier one in the entire Daisai domain. But right now, Demi Tian, you seem to have suffered some kind of severe damage, and was slowly recovering. And he didn't even think that it was Jian Wushuang next to him that made Demitian look like this. "Little friend, What do you plan to do when you come here? Nan Xian continued to ask. Find someone. Jian Wushuang said quietly, and then took out a map from his arms. This map was made by Xiaodijin before he left. However, the route of this map is also extremely vague. It only depicts the approximate location of Sansuan Mountain, as for the specific location is still unknown. Southwest, 42 horizons. Jian Wushuang whispered softly and retracted the map, already making a decision in his heart. The void is vast, and Sansuan Mountain is roughly in the southwest. The farther you go to the southwest, the farther you are from the great heaven horizon, the less you have to worry about being stared at by the eagle dog under his seat. But even though I think so, things often backfire. Just when Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian were about to fold to the southwest, a low voice sounded without warning. Stop for me. A total of 7 figures, 7 evangelists, directly surrounded from all sides at this moment. The leading young man, Yanxian, looked at Jian Wushuang coldly, and a sneered at the corner of his mouth. Jian Wushuang's heart shook slightly. He didn't expect an ordinary Yanxian to call his name accurately. After a brief thought, he said, I don't intend to come here to cause trouble, so I just leave. After that, Jian Wushuang took Nan Xian and prepared to leave. Really arrogant, it's so big that you just come and leave? The young man Yanxian gave a cold cry and waved his arm, and the other 6 Yanxian released his strength and trapped Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian. His Royal Highness wants to see you. I hope you don't know how to praise. Before Jian Wushuang could speak, Nan Xian sneered, Your master hasn't handed you over, is he observing his words? Youth Yanxian frowned slightly, obviously didn't care about Nan Xian. Who are you? This seat is your grandfather. Nan Xian burst out loudly, and then went up without any warning. Thousands of terrifying huamang exploded from the palm of the palm, swept across the wilds and wilds at an unpredictable speed. This is the coercion of the Dian Immortal, and it is impossible for Yanxian to escape. The headed young man Yanxian even just reacted when the fairy body was strangled and turned into powder. The other 6 Yanxians were no exception, all disappeared without a trace. In less than a breath, the 7 evangelists did not see any trace. A group of scumbags dare to block this seat? Nan Xian's tone was very unkind. Obviously, this series of troubles made him quite depressed. After solving the trouble, Jian Wushuang knew that he couldn't stay for long, and disappeared to the southwest with Nan Xian. Chapter 5071. The vast sky is vast, encompassing countless horizons. In the original battle, although the fairy mountain-blessed land at the core of Domitian was severely damaged, the outer space has not been affected much. The southwest position is the most remote and cold position in the entire Domitian jurisdiction. Even Yanxian is rarely willing to get involved. It is cold, has very little power, and is full of impurities that belong to the ancient age. Looking around, the heavenly planes are sparsely visible. Between the 42nd heaven. Moving forward in the void, Jian Wushuang frowned and thought. In this great sky, although the southwestern area is sparse, it is also compared to other places. If you really want to find Sansuan Mountain one by one, it will probably take a long time. Looking at the heavenly planes like stars, Nan Xian said, Little friend, you are sure that the Yanxian you are looking for is here? Jian Wushuang nodded. It's indeed here, but I'm afraid I will find the exact location for a while. Can't stay here for a long time, Nan Xian said again. I'm afraid he has already noticed that he has just killed the immortal under the seat of the Lord of Heaven. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid we will be discovered soon. Nan Xian's words are not without reason. According to the character of Gongzi Jiao, he will never let go of this opportunity. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was also in hesitation. He doesn't know how many hole cards the sun corrects. If there is a conflict again, I am afraid it will not be easy. Leave the day for the time being, and make plans after a while, Nan Xian looked at him, or I will go with you and continue to go deeper. Jian Wushuang said, You don't have to do this. My business shouldn't involve you. Nan Xian raised his eyebrows and smiled. A confidant is hard to find, And a confidant who can talk to me about the sword is even harder to find. I don't want to see a confidant in a dilemma. Weird guy. Jian Wushuang shook his head, a little helpless. However, at this moment, the void was suddenly shaken, and then the deadly and cold void suddenly filled with a strong and surging power. Come on, so fast? Nan Xian raised his brows, quite surprised. Relying on Daangxian's perception, he realized that a majestic aura was crushing from all directions. Jian Wushuang's brows tightened, and a bad premonition flashed in his heart. At the next moment, the originally dead and cold void was suddenly illuminated by pure power, and a body that was capable of shaking the sky and the earth soared out of the various heavenly planes and surrounded it together. They are all immortals. Nearly 70 Yangxians appeared, and it seemed that they had been waiting for a long time, and they only appeared when the time came. Every one of the immortals, the whole body exudes surging strength. All of them surrounded Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian Tuan with cold eyes. Cue to die. Nan Xian smiled disdainfully. Yanxian and Dianxian have long been like a moat and ravine, and they are no longer comparable. In the face of these nearly 70 Yangxians, Nan Xian alone could erase them. Jian Wushuang frowned, and now he has completely transformed after experiencing the endless sea. Hugh said that he is the 70 evangelists, even if 100 more, he will not hurt him at all. But now the Sun Jiao didn't know his changes, so he made a wrong judgment. However, no matter how wrong the judgment is, the young master still pays enough attention to it and predetermined 70 Yangxians. If you haven't entered the borderless sea, the 70 Yangxians are enough to cause serious damage to Jian Wushuang and even be able to successfully siege. But now everything has changed drastically. The 70 evangelists did not rush into a rampage as soon as they came up, but were scattered without chaos and connected to each other. And their respective powers began to condense, forming an immortal array that was like a cage. Want to use the immortal formation to trap this seat? Nan Xian sneered, his clothes suddenly floated, and his unparalleled power broke out. The qi, luck and strength that belong to Dian Immortal are undoubtedly revealed at this moment. All Yanxian faces were shocked. How could they have thought that a Dianxian would actually appear? Dian Immortal, isn't it all extinct? Without even giving these immortals time to consider, Nan Xian revealed his decisive side. Boom! The incomparable Yanli Damong, with Nan Xian as the center, shot up and instantly tore through the fairy formation constructed by the 70 Yangxians. At this moment, Jian Wushuang also moved, and the pure and dazzling pattern quietly flowed around him. Boom! The heaven-shielding immortal array was eventually torn apart, and the force flowed to pieces. The nearly 10 Yanxian facing them hadn't reacted yet. They were directly broken by Jian Wushuang's immortal body, and Xianyuan was erased. No one Yanxian could get close to him, and even the void was torn out deep ravines wherever the red-golden Yanli power passed. In just one face-to-face meeting, nearly 20 Yanxian died in Jian Wushuang's hands. Although Nan Xian was Dian Immortal, the speed of erasing Yanxian couldn't be compared with Jian Wushuang. This also surprised him. How can an immortal be so powerful? But soon Nan Xian was relieved. Jian Wushuang was able to fight with him the first time he met, and he did not lose the wind at all. This was unimaginable. Little friend, it's really amazing. Nan Xian smiled bitterly. Xian even charged again. The 70 fairy gods, even if they are placed in the entire big division domain, are a terrifying force. Even the general super-universe, there is no such background. But right now, these Yangxians were easily slaughtered. Jian Wushuang didn't even call out the invisible sword, and as he waved his hand, the evolving immortal disappeared. Walking out of the borderless sea, his changes have exceeded all Yangxian's imagination, including himself. The immortal body is like a container, constantly shattering and reshaping. Until Jian Wushuang regains control, it has reached a certain terrible change. He was able to wave his hand to kill the Dian Immortal Qin Tuo, who possessed weird power. As for these immortals, how could he stop him? In just a short period of time, 70 Dian Immortals were slaughtered. The void was slightly torn, the broken fairy body, and the immortal source in a state of no owner, all swam in the void. Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian stood shoulder to hand, watching this scene calmly. Little friend, go or not? Nan Xian turned around and asked. This time, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate, go. Erasing the 70 immortals, this is undoubtedly a greater blow to the young master. If he does not leave, he might make crazy moves. If he just walked away, the two quickly swept away 1,000,000 miles away. But the next moment, the void of the great sky began to oscillate, and the stars and sun began to shift. An ancient, silent breath quietly emerged in the wild. If you like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.